Good afternoon and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing on the Committee on Public Housing. At this time, we ask that you silence cell phones and electronic devices to minimize disruptions throughout the hearing. If you have testimony you wish to submit for the record, you may do so via email at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. We thank you for your cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
This meeting is coming to order. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this hearing of the Committee on Public Housing. I am Councilmember Alexa Aviles, the chair of the Committee on Public Housing, and I'd like to thank you all for attending this oversight hearing to examine air quality in NYCHA apartments. We are joined by my colleague, Councilmember Carmen de la Rosa. Adverse air quality can have serious and severe impacts on our health and well-being. Over the last 3 years, as we all have spent more time than we ever could have imagined in our homes and apartments, we saw the importance of making sure that the air we breathed was as healthy as possible. The tenants in NYCHA have fought for years for clean air in their apartments, in their developments, and truly for all residents in the city. And too often, they face the day-to-day reality of knowing the air in their buildings was unhealthy due to mold and pests inside their apartments, as well as construction and other causes outside their buildings. One of, if not the main reason for the imposition of a federal monitor at NYCHA was the ongoing inability to correct known causes of adverse air quality, like mold and pests. Today, we will aim to learn from NYCHA on how they have changed the way they handle complaints and conditions that implicate air quality both inside and outside NYCHA buildings. I'm interested to know what steps they have taken to remediate these conditions, as well as what inspections and follow-ups are done after to ensure the work is completed timely and correctly. I want to know what oversight and rules are in place to ensure NYCHA staff and outside contractors work quickly and efficiently both inside and outside NYCHA buildings, and what steps are taken to make sure that any dust or debris caused by construction does not become yet another hazard that tenants have to endure. This includes what tenants in buildings still fully under NYCHA, as well as those whose development have undergone conversion to RAD Pact. Finally, I'm interested in the proactive steps that NYCHA is taking to improve resident air quality. We cannot simply accept actions which correct a condition back to the status quo, but should be comprehensively and decisively working to make sure that NYCHA tenants will breathe clean air inside and outside their homes today and in the future. Today, we will also hear Resolution 190, which I sponsored, which calls for the New York State Legislature and Governor to provide their share of an additional $3 billion that is needed to address capital needs resulting from the decades of disinvestment in NYCHA's building stock. I would like to thank my staff, Christina Botego, Edward Cerna, and James Niemeister, along with the Public Housing Committee staff, Jose Conde, Ricky Chaula, and Connor Mealy, for all the work that they've put into this hearing. In keeping with the tradition of this committee, before we hear from NYCHA, we will first hear from a panel of residents and advocates who closely work with residents. I will turn it over to committee counsel to call up the witnesses.
For the pre-panel, we'll start with Ms. Dana Eldon and Ms. Danette Chavez, who are both on Zoom, and also here in person, Jaron Burke and Joel Kupferberg can come up to the table, and we'll have the residents on Zoom speak first. Ms. Eldon, you should be getting a notice to unmute yourself shortly.
Are you ready?
We can hear you.
Okay.
You can begin, Ms. Eldon.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to the City Council, and to Councilwoman Aviles, and we thank you for the work that you've put forth thus far on behalf of NYCHA residents. Um, I'm here today to give a testimony in regards to the environmental issues that surround NYCHA. Not only are we in need of repair, but when repair is done, there are certain standards that should be kept and adhered to in regard to the air quality and environment for our residents. I say this because soon I am to receive new roofs for six of my 6 buildings. And I know that there's going to be a lot of debris that comes from that. The roofs that are on our buildings now are original roofs. And the buildings were constructed in 1958. Thus, when we begin to remove that roof by layers, there is asbestos and other chemicals and materials that were used back in that time that will have to be removed safely. And for the sake of our residents, I am concerned that there will be issues in regarding to air quality, not only outside the buildings themselves, but in the apartments that are on the 20th and 21st floors. So I believe that NYCHA will try to do the best that it can to adhere to any issues in regard to air quality, but it is a big concern. And as a member of Residents to Preserve Public Housing, I would also like to address the fact that funding is needed, not just for capital funds, which we're requesting $3.4 billion per year. However, there will be additional monies that would be necessary for residents to be either transferred to courtesy apartments or hotels if they reject a courtesy apartment. So there's so many issues that are around the quality of life when it comes to air quality in my development. And from what I've heard in the last couple of weeks, this is an issue in many other developments as well. With standing dirt that has been dumped in areas, garbage, littering, pest control. So it's a wide issue, but in regards to construction purposes, I think it's important that we seek funding for those projects that are in work right now, but for future projects in the coming years, where we will be concerned with the materials that are used or removed from older sites. And I thank you, and I yield the floor.
Thank you so much, Ms. Eldon.
Ms. Chavez, you should be receiving an invite to unmute yourself shortly. You can begin as soon as it is unmuted.
Hi, I think I'm unmuted now. Okay, so thank you for inviting me to this forum. In fact, having this forum to discuss the environmental conditions within NYCHA apartments. I think the conditions outside the developments should be given consideration as well, such as construction. For me, the issue is money or the lack thereof, because if you don't have sufficient funding, you can't address the problems that are highlighted, right? I've seen a whole lot of effort into highlighting the need for repairs and things like that, such as what was recently done by the comp controller, but with no money going along with what is highlighted, it seems to me effort in vain. We had $40 billion on the table, okay, to fully fund NYCHA. That got taken off the table, and now we're dealing with a preservation trust. There is again $70 billion on the table, and I hear crickets about it, with a lot of effort and insistence in bills being put before the governor to partially fund NYCHA. I appreciate the efforts by the bills being proposed, but I feel that if the government is the cause or the reason of continual disinvestments from NYCHA, then the focus ought to be on the government, particularly when money is currently on the table seeking to fund NYCHA. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Travis. I guess I have questions for Ms. Eldon. I guess I'll start there. Ms. Eldon, if you're still on the Zoom?
There should be an invite to unmute yourself shortly. Ms. Eldon, I believe you're not muted if you want to ask your question.
You have to step away.
There you go. Ms. Eldon, can you hear me?
You have to step away for a moment.
So, Ms. Eldon, I was curious, thank you for your testimony and certainly your concern. I was curious if you could speak to the communication that has been provided by NYCHA around the replacement of the roofs and particularly safety protocols. Ms. Eldon, we can't hear you if you're talking. Oh, okay. Okay, I think we will continue with the in-person testimony, and then maybe when Ms. Eldon gets back, we'll be able to follow up on that question. Thank you.
So now we'll hear from the in-person panel, Joel Kupferberg, and we'll go with Joel Kupferberg first, and then Jaron Burke will be next. Oh, so sorry, Ms. Sosa.
Joel Kupferman. Okay. And if I can make a request, my intern is with me. Could he speak?
We'll have him speak at a next panel, at the next panel after the agency speaks.
Okay. I'm Joel Kupferman, Executive Director and Attorney at the Environmental Justice Initiative, and personally familiar with the air problems at NYCHA as counsels at tenant associations and RPPH. Much of the exposure can be prevented. It's a question of will, not money. Much of the indoor air toxicity is coming from the outside. Indoor air quality is highly dependent upon the immediate outdoors. From loose, disturbed soils, soils laden with dangerous levels of lead, arsenic, hexavalent chromium, and such. The disturbed soils, once covered with some kind of ground cover, has been disturbed by uncontrolled construction. In the name of good, in the name of resiliency, trenches are dug for pipes, soils are piled up in front of tenants' windows. We've learned from 9/11 that the windows do not block the dust. Soils are distributed onto the paths and are trekked into the apartments. NYCHA residents are certainly vulnerable. Old, young, disabled, asthmatic, and people of color, all subject to cumulative chronic impact. Its impact is multi-vector and multi-source, with little chance to escape. EJI would like to point out that NYCHA and its contractors have continuously violated a major provision in their contracts, Appendix 2, dust control. This provision states that dust control must occur in order to prevent exposures to residents and workers. Failure to contain the soil violates city, state, federal stormwater regulations and many other regulations. As a matter of fact, one of the sections requires that the contractor remove toxic soils from the site, not just keep them covered, to remove it. We've been after NYCHA at Smith, at St. Nick's, and elsewhere, pointing out the high levels of this toxicity, and was gone basically on deaf ears. At Reese, and my intern will further explain, is a major hotspot, that people are being exposed to this soil that could easily be prevented. The prevention is covering it up before the removal. We asked and demanded, and we actually did walkthroughs with Daniel Green and people who are going to testify today, and we showed them the problems at Smith, how high levels they were of the arsenic. One of the quick fixes is covering up the soil, using geotextile, using grass cover. That was not done for years. When we saw the problem at Reese, I was astonished that not only was the soil uncovered, there was pesticide application there. Pesticides being used. Could I continue for? Okay.
Okay.
What's upsetting about pesticides, and the city got hit, we learned from the West Nile virus, is that it's important for the doctor to know what people are being sprayed with, inside the apartments and outside. So here we have at Reese, unnotified, unlabeled pesticides being used. We also know that the arsenic that people are being exposed to comes from a long-standing rat control program that the city health department did. It took us a lot to bend the city's arm to come inspect Smith, and Smith wrote up a violation saying you can't have this high level of soil uncovered. And what did Smith do? What did the contractors at Smith do? Nothing. They allowed to continue to let those soils exposed. And what's upsetting, and I think you might want to ask, is how can the contractors get away with these contract violations over and over again? At Smith, it's $85 million was paid. Nothing was held back in reserve. There was no request for remediation. And we also learned that the monitoring was faulty on the outside. Through the walkthroughs, we found that the monitor was on one side, away from the work, and also we were very concerned that they were actually cutting into silica, concrete, right below tenants' windows who had two asthmatics. We also learned, and the Environmental Justice Initiative did a lot of work with 9/11, we learned from 9/11 that it was the silica alone was the killer. So it's not just the high levels of arsenic and lead that's in the soil, it's the PM 2.5 that's bad. Harvard studies have shown, and we distributed to everybody, that a slight increase in exposure to PM 2.5, chronic, that's all these residents are facing, leads to a major increase in COVID death. So the onslaught of this dust exposure is not minor, it's not inconvenient, but also it could be controlled. And it's the contractors, a lot of it's coming from malfeasant contractors, and it's Smith, it was Navalis, and the construction manager is named STV, and now STV has been promoted by NYCHA to a higher position. They're using something called self-certification, where they're just testifying and signing off that their work is fine without bringing outside inspectors. So we believe that there's a systematic underassessment of the problem, that we're relying on contractors that are hiring contractors to tell everyone that it's okay. The tests are faulty. There's not enough monitoring. And also, I think it's important to point out at Reese, which is emblematic elsewhere, that we're not testing the people themselves. That's important. And it's classic environmental injustice that people complain about when they go to a doctor that there's many, many tests that are ordered. At Reese, we've had a death of someone, the doctor came out and it turns out to be high arsenic blood levels. The doctor asked that people be tested, and NYCHA and the city said no. You're probably getting arsenic poisoning from eating seafood. I think it's important for you to ask how many people are eating seafood at Reese, and also that their kids are not playing in that soil that's piled up. So I think it's a question, the air quality is a major problem that's chronic, okay, but also I just want to really point out that it's the malfeasance of the contractors that are getting paid federal and state money to do this work that could be prevented. Not only is this work bad, it's killing the natural resources that's so important for NYCHA. 2,700 acres of land is NYCHA property that should be positive natural resources that provide the trees to flourish, to block the dust that comes down, and to provide cooling. Yet, this faulty, unfettered construction is allowed to take place where we've shown these people themselves that the trees are still going down at Smith. They didn't deal with a contractor to fix the soil, to fix the destruction, and to let those trees flourish. And so now, what's upsetting to me as an environmental lawyer that's doing all this work, that it's federally funded money that's actually exacerbating the problem. And then part of our mantra of our organization is to take away that mantra, the halo, that people say that they're doing the good work, and yet they're actually increasing people's vulnerability and exposure that could be easily prevented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kupferman. Can you tell me what was the name of the contractor that you are referring to in your testimony?
Is Navalis and STV. And I think that's a major part of the problem. We've had whistleblowers that have come to us that have actually been fired by NYCHA, been told that when there's contract review, that just push it through, contractors will ask for change work orders for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there's not much scrutiny of that money.
And to what agencies did you report your findings when you noted the high levels of arsenic and other toxins? Was that just simply to NYCHA, or
To NYCHA, to the City Health Department and the State Health Department, and to EPA.
And did any of those agencies respond?
They responded, and we will also, well, they responded irresponsibly. It was a letter from the City Health Department, basically, that laid out the seafood warning. But I think it's one of the worst environmental insults to everybody that it was the Deputy Health Commissioner and the Deputy DEP Commissioner came out with NYCHA staff giving out bottles of water, telling people that the arsenic was not a problem because the lab made a mistake. It's also interesting that they spent so much time trying to undo that lab without doing other testing that we asked for over and over again at Smith and all the other NYCHA houses where there's construction, the soil is being disturbed. But they also said this in front of the piles of soil. The soil's 8 feet high, right below the windows, and we know that that's a possible, probable source of arsenic and lead. The reason why the Fed stepped in is there was insufficient testing of blood, and the lead, not just insufficient, was malfeasant testing. So here we have a similar problem that there's not just arsenic, there's lead in the soil, and yet NYCHA continues to refuse to test and let people know what the problem is.
Can I ask you, in terms of the uncovered piles of dirt, how long did that condition persist? How often did residents?
I believe it happened for months, and I believe some of that soil is still uncovered. It was moved from pile to site to site. And then we also will present in our other testimony is that it's the piles that are up there, and this is occurring in many other NYCHA houses. There's trenching that goes on. Right. Trenching, the soil is removed and piled up and not covered. And it should be removed, let alone covered.
That's correct.
Okay? And also, there's a way of monitoring this. This basically no one wants to know. This is a $200 air monitor in my hand, plugs into the computer, and it starts giving us live data that everyone could see in terms of all the way down to 0.1, which is even smaller than the 2.5, which everyone's concerned about. So the monitoring isn't there. NYCHA relies on the monitors of the contractors, where they only set up 1 or 2, and they discount the work that's happening. We're told when we're cutting that silica that the soil wasn't being disturbed, and we know it went into the apartments. So how could they claim that it's not penetration into these buildings without testing it? Mm-hmm. And also, With these are 85, these are contracts, there's still another $500 million or so to go, with the FEMA funded stuff. So is a combination of Sandy recovery. We still know that the flooding is going to happen again. Studies that we presented from Louisiana and other places, that when the water comes up, it takes the arsenic and lead in the soil and redistributes it and leaves it there. So we have a problem that we're spending this money and the residents are going through this, and also there's a fake rebuild. At Smith, they were paid and the construction corrections were not made. And you might want to ask, where was the money set aside for the trees to be rebuilt, to be restored? The contractor just basically just walked away. So I have I guess, as a long-time environmental lawyer, I just have a feeling that these, especially the contractors, it's almost like they're laughing at us and laughing at everyone here that no matter what we point out, they still know they're going to get paid. And there's something called a bad actor policy that the city and the state has used to stop bad contracting. And NYCHA's going to tell you that they're mandated that the low bid wins. The low bid has attracted the largest array of bad contractors that definitely know that they're getting away, with this work. That this NYCHA should start enforcing the law and putting penalties onto who they hire. And by doing this, we're going to get rid of the bad guys and start rewarding the good contractor that's there.
So last question for you, Mr. Kupferman, because we have other testimony, but in your estimation, was any of your data evidence that you've collected on behalf of the residents taken seriously by NYCHA?
Was it taken seriously?
Yeah.
No. And also, I just wanted to take a little umbrage also, is that the right word? But also, we use their data of high levels of SFOCs, of exceedances. And then what happens is they gave us an executive summary that said it was just minor exceedance. You might want to ask, who gave them the power to say minor exceedance? We also know, I know the most about Smith, is that Smith has had several people die in the last few years. It was in the 9/11 envelope, as is this building.
Yep.
And we would, okay. So it's part of the problem is that it's amazing that for the want of a few $1,000s to do that soil coverage, we've actually endangered that vulnerable population, and especially at Smith, we have 9/11 victims that now they're beginning to die of cancer. So I don't think it was taken seriously at all.
Thank you for your work, and thank you for the work you've done on behalf of the residents. We appreciate you, and I'm gonna switch quickly to Ms. Eldon to ask some questions around her testimony, if you don't mind, and then we'll continue here. Ms. Eldon, thank you for coming back.
I have a dog that's seizure prone, so that's why I step away quickly.
Oh, look at that.
She suffers from seizures.
No worries. Thank you so much for returning. I wanted to know, Ms. Eldon, you mentioned that 7 of the buildings in your development are going to be receiving new roofs. Obviously, something clearly needed. Hopefully will stop the leakage that I'm sure is occurring throughout all the buildings. Can you tell me how NYCHA has communicated this process with you and the tenants, and if at all you have received any safety protocols around what is about to happen within the buildings?
Well, basically, we had a meeting with the design team from NYCHA. Well, I did, and my board, partially on my board, that were present. We were shown there were different types of materials that could be used, but it was finally decided on a substance that was close to what you see on the boat, and then nothing gets through. So it's some kind of material like that. We were just told that the excavation, they needed to check the bricks that were around the top floors, which they did.
Ms. Eldon, I'm so sorry. It's a little difficult to actually hear you. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might be me. So there were some issues about the bricks on the top floors. And that resulted in the Department of buildings putting up scaffolding to even have the height of the buildings. But other than knowing that there's asbestos on the roof and that the layers could contain a brick, water, some asbestos, and maybe a couple other materials. That's as much as I know. But I do know that is the original roof on all 6 buildings. So it was quite a concern to me once they started the construction of removing the roof, that there would be a lot of particles, as it was explained to me, that may fall from the top of the building. But there was also concern about the asbestos that is on the roof, that was part of the layering that was used back in the 1950s.
Sure.
That's my concern.
Were you at all, was any of the tenants offered air purifiers or anything of that sort that might help to mitigate what is potentially?
There's been no conversation about what are the needs for those on the top 2 floors. The only explanation that residents have gotten so far came from me at public meetings. And I explained to them the possibility of layering those layers being taken off of the roof. And that was as a result because we wanted to know why we had so much scaffolding stretched out all over the property. And so I explained to them the process that we went through, examining the bricks that were on the top floor and the precaution of making sure that they would be safe coming in and out of the building, putting such extensive scaffolding. And so every meeting, I try to keep them up to date with what I know thus far. And so far, I know that somewhere in September, anywhere from July to September, construction will begin. But nothing has been said about what procedures will be taken prior to.
Okay, so Ms. Eldon, it's still a little hard to hear, but I think your last statement that nothing has been said about procedures so far is an important one. So we will follow up with you offline around making sure that the residents have a full set of information that they need around what is going to be happening in these buildings, particularly because it implicates, the health and safety.
Because I have a concern whether or not they're going to those that would remain in their apartment and refuse to leave. What will we do with them? And of course, we have so many vacancies. I'm sure that we'll be able to move some to another apartment.
Okay.
They're going to do this process, but it's still, that stuff is going to come down. It's going to be in the air. It's going to go throughout the neighborhood. So we're not the only people who are going to be breathing in that residue.
Thank you so much, Ms. Eldon. We will follow up and hopefully get a better connection next time. I think we got most of what you said, but we'll work on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues who have joined us. We have Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala and Councilmember Carmen de la Rosa. And Councilmember Barron seems to have stepped out for a minute. So last but not least, we'll have Jaron Burke from We Act.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Vilas and the Committee on Public Housing. My name is Jaron Burke. I'm the Environmental Health Manager at We Act for Environmental Justice, and I have my MPH from Columbia University and a focus on air pollution specifically. Indoor air quality is one of the many environmental challenges that NYCHA residents face, and that includes exposure to particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and carbon monoxide. The majority of these pollutants are generated through gas combustion, specifically from gas appliances such as stoves and boilers, and obviously there are other sources of indoor air pollution as well. These pollutants are a concern because they exacerbate cardiorespiratory health conditions, including asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, or COPD, and can also increase the risk for heart attacks. In NYCHA development specifically, residents are disproportionately bearing the health impacts of indoor air pollution relative to other housing residents citywide. Between 2010 and 2014, the age-adjusted rate of preventable asthma hospitalizations was more than 300% higher among public housing residents than any other resident citywide. This increased burden of hospitalization is not shared evenly across all NYCHA developments. For example, some NYCHA developments had up to a 3 times greater risk of hospitalization for COPD compared to other developments. In addition to air pollution from gas combustion, mold and pests should be treated as indoor air quality concerns as well because of their role that they play in negative health outcomes associated with asthma. Exposure to mold has been associated with childhood wheezing and childhood asthma, while mold sensitization and exposure has been associated with asthma symptoms, exacerbations, emergency visits for asthma, and lower lung function for urban children living with asthma. Pest allergens such as mouse and cockroach allergens are also a major cause of urban pediatric asthma morbidity. Despite these well-documented health impacts, there is no clear effort from NYCHA to monitor indoor air quality in a meaningful way within or across developments. While NYCHA does report to have an indoor air quality oversight team, or IAQOT, as part of their environmental health and safety department, the team only includes 1 administrator and 5 specialists, which is drastically insufficient for monitoring the indoor air of all 326 NYCHA developments. To properly address the major health threat that indoor air quality poses to NYCHA residents, NYCHA must significantly scale up the indoor air quality oversight team to carry out routine air quality monitoring along with targeted air quality assessments in response to resident complaints. Air quality assessments should be prioritized for residents living with asthma, COPD, and other respiratory conditions. And NYCHA should also prioritize hiring current NYCHA residents for those roles. I also want to say that NYCHA should also coordinate with other third-party environmental management and testing companies to conduct random testing throughout NYCHA developments to ensure the validity of air quality assessments conducted by their own team. With that, I'll end, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? What do you see happening on the ground and with the tenants that you work with in terms of NYCHA's activity on air quality?
I have heard from all the NYCHA residents that we work with that have had very little, if any, exposure to this indoor air quality oversight team. I don't think any of them have expressed a direct interaction with them themselves and have not seen any direct indoor air quality assessments. Most of what we hear from our residents are complaints about some of the other things that I mentioned, like mold and pests, and those exposures to indoor allergens and pollutants, and concerns about their gas stoves and the shortness of breath and other health impacts and emergency department visits that they've experienced as a result, but very little mention of any kind of testing that has happened as a result on the part of NYCHA.
Have you seen any written communications around any of these issues in NYCHA, testing, any safety protocols, anything of that nature?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In terms of, you mentioned the 3 times greater rate of hospitalizations for COPD. Do you know which developments those are referring to, possibly?
I can't speak off the top of my head, but I can, in my written testimony I'll include a reference. That study is relatively recent, as of 2020, and so I should be able to include that.
We'd love to follow up on that. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for supporting the residents. And thank you.
If I could just say something about mitigation, and I believe under the Baez agreement, the stipulation is that to combat mold, that HEPA vacuums would be provided. Is something that it's probably one of the easiest fix in terms of environmental impact. These HEPA vacuums grab the dust and hold the dust that's there. EPA has used this to fight lead problems up in Syracuse and elsewhere, and there's ways of providing them on a lending basis where what people could share. So NYCHA hasn't been fulfilling their obligation for the HEPA vacuums, but also the HEPA would deal with mold. It also deal with all that lead dust and the other dust that's coming in. And not only that, when they would use the NYCHA, when the HEPA vacuum would grab those samples, and it gives us an archive to let people know what they're being exposed to. So it's like a 1-2 punch. And part of the problem also at NYCHA, people are being exposed to pesticides, fighting bed bugs and the like. And there's plenty of programs out there that using HEPA vacuums and steamers and allowing the residents to participate in this prevents pesticide exposure and also is one of the best ways of fighting bugs. So my opening talk was about the pesticides that are in the soil. There's plenty of pesticide use that's definitely overused and not controlled at NYCHA. So the solutions are there, and and I think one of the questions on the financial end is like, why can't they go through the pyramid of saying what's the cheapest way to expend some of this money and even let the tenants participate in the cleanup and the analysis. Besides the air monitor that I showed you, I have a little $100 thermometer, electronic thermometer, that will allow the tenants to figure out where the water leak is in the wall so they could help identify. So I think part of all that money that's being spent, the Section 3, that the people are being hired, there should be training programs, that people become environmental analysts alone. They're just a little bit of equipment. You should ask NYCHA, why didn't they ask EPA, has a whole citizen science program, that we could arm the tenants, a little bit of training with a minimum of equipment to be their own monitors. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a reminder, all witnesses can submit written testimony through council.nyc.gov/testify. And I apologize for misstating your name earlier, Mr. Kupferman. My apologies.
It's happened to the best of us.
We'll now call the representatives of NYCHA.
I'd like to recognize we're joined by Councilmember Perina Sanchez and joined again by Councilmember Barron.
If everyone who's going to testify for NYCHA, you just raise your hand and I'll administer the oath. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? You may begin.
Chair Vilas, members of the Committee on Public Housing, other distinguished members of the City Council, NYCHA residents, community advocates, members of the public, good afternoon. I am Brad Greenberg, the Chief Compliance Officer at NYCHA. I'm pleased to be joined by Daniel Green, our Senior Vice President for Healthy Homes, Joyce Cinderbrand, our Senior Vice President for Capital Programs, Josephine Bartlett, our Senior Director of Pest Management, and other members of NYCHA's team. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss air quality in NYCHA apartments. Improving residents' quality of life is at the heart of our mission at NYCHA. In the last few years, we have focused on building out programs that are helping to improve indoor air quality. Today, I'll discuss some of those programs and the changes we've made since we signed our agreement with HUD, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, the EPA, and the City of New York. I also look forward to discussing with you where we must focus next and how we can work together to invest in NYCHA's apartments. I know all of us care deeply about the work we must do together to ensure NYCHA's apartments remain a source of stable, deeply affordable, and healthy housing for the hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who call NYCHA home. As you know, NYCHA signed its agreement with HUD in January 2019. The agreement represented an inflection point for NYCHA's history, and we need to get it right. The agreement focuses on several critical pillar areas that most impact residents. Many of these areas were a focus of the agreement precisely because of their impact on indoor air quality and resident health. That includes mold and leaks, pest and waste management, and the need to invest capital in our heat systems and other areas that can make a difference for indoor air quality. I'd like to highlight a few of the changes and investments we have made in the last few years to help improve indoor air quality. First, with respect to mold. Mold tends to grow in wet or damp places, and exposure to mold can cause allergic reactions or asthma. NYCHA, in collaboration with our independent data analyst and independent mold analyst, and in accordance with our mold action plan, has focused on a number of initiatives to help reduce mold growth in NYCHA apartments. One key way that we're working to improve air quality and reduce the occurrence of mold is by enhancing and modernizing mechanical ventilation systems at our developments. To improve our ventilation systems, we had engineering firms proactively inspect our fans, and then we installed oversized fans to ensure air can move more easily through lateral vents. We also launched the Clean Vents Initiative, where NYCHA staff use a HEPA vacuum to remove dust and debris that have built up in bathroom and kitchen vents over many decades. When we do this work, we measure airflow volume to ensure the upgrades are working. This was a massive undertaking, launched during the pandemic, and we recently celebrated the completion of the roof fan portion of the project. Over the past 2 years, we replaced 6,188 roof fans across the authority. Engineers determined that many of NYCHA's other roof fans, 2,248 in total, are modern and function effectively. Ensuring that roof fans are functioning properly provides better ventilation for residents and helps prevent humid, moist conditions that can give rise to mold. New York City's comptroller audited the roof fan program and found that NYCHA's Office of Mold Assessment and Remediation maintained adequate controls over the project, including by taking steps to combat delays, by using emergency contracts, by mobilizing an asbestos team, and by working with manufacturers to deliver thousands of rooftop fans. NYCHA's Federal Monitor, in a recent report, also noted that with completion of the roof fan portion of the project, quote, mold cases have been reduced significantly in the past year. These are steps in the right direction. We also recently celebrated a milestone in our Clean Vents initiative. We have clean vents in nearly 70,000 apartments across the city. Cleaning bathroom and kitchen vents dramatically improves ventilation and air circulation in apartments by an average of 37%. We aim to finish this proactive effort to clean vents in all applicable apartments by the middle of this year. To date, the roof fan and ventilation cleaning initiatives have helped improve the quality of life for about 85,000 NYCHA families. In the last few years, NYCHA also rolled out the Mold Busters initiative to ensure we properly inspect for mold and excessive moisture conditions using objective standards of measurement. Mold Busters involves enhanced tools, materials, and strategies, along with staff training and greater accountability through photo documentation and follow-up inspections. As part of Mold Busters, NYCHA staff must work through a set of tasks, from cleaning vents and repairing windows to remediating leaks and using mold-resistant paint, all as part of a holistic approach to remediating mold in a resident's apartment. We ensure compliance with this new business process through re-inspections by our independent mold analyst, our environmental health and safety department, and by using data tools that were developed with our independent data analyst. We also focus now on completing the tasks identified in the unit during an inspection that we know will help address the health hazard in the more immediate term. Our work to prevent and remediate mold is making a difference for residents. To date, our Office of Mold Assessment and Remediation, in collaboration with our operations team, has closed nearly 17,000 mold cleaning and mold-resistant paint work orders as part of Operation Mold Cleanup, which was launched in May 2022. We also created a team dedicated to cleaning up mold. It's completed about 2,300 mold cleaning work orders to date. Since it was established last year, our Mold Inspection Initiative team has completed about 1,400 mold inspections at high-risk locations. A key tool in fighting mold in the past year was the introduction of the Mold and Leak Scorecard, a visual and assessment tool that rates the performance of every single NYCHA development, providing us with a greater understanding of where we need to focus our Mold Busters-related resources. We use the scorecard to select developments with the most mold-related work orders for our enhanced oversight program, creating performance milestones for these developments and providing staff training when necessary. As part of this program, we help close mold inspections, mold cleaning work orders, tub enclosure replacement work orders, and other skilled trades work. Our building line initiative is replacing entire plumbing systems in select building lines that are failing quickly, leading to leaks up and down the building line. This initiative helps to address mold while upgrading kitchens and bathrooms. Our comprehensive modernization program and our PACT program also include plumbing systems in the scope of work. Roofs and facades are also being addressed at some locations using these and other capital sources. But replacing our plumbing systems and addressing sources of moisture penetration through our roofs and facades across NYCHA's more than 2,000 buildings in the long term requires tens of billions of dollars and a real investment across the portfolio. Let me emphasize this point. We have a short window to address NYCHA's plumbing and its physical infrastructure before the systems fail. Most of our buildings were constructed in the 1940s and 1950s and have not had their plumbing systems replaced since they were originally constructed. To prevent moist and damp conditions in NYCHA apartments, we need to invest significantly in the properties. Now I'll talk about pest and waste management. Like mold, managing pests in a way that protects residents' health is an important pillar of our agreement with HUD. The agreement focuses on the extermination of pests, including rats, mice, and cockroaches, which can be sources of indoor allergens. The agreement also requires that we adopt integrated pest management, or IPM, an environmentally sensitive approach to extermination that ensures we are not impacting air quality with excessive spraying of pesticides. NYCHA's Pest Control Department, in collaboration with the Federal Monitor under our Pest and Waste Management Action Plan, has focused on a number of initiatives to help reduce pest populations in NYCHA apartments. For instance, NYCHA has been changing its business process using a new IPM standard procedure designed with the Federal Monitor's expert entomologist to emphasize a set of tasks that reduces indoor allergens while also getting at the root cause of infestations. In accordance with IPM principles, NYCHA uses residual sprays less often and instead applies more gel in our pest treatments, benefiting residents' health. NYCHA's exterminators also use a HEPA vacuum to remove any roach shells or rodent droppings that can impact respiratory conditions. And our exterminators use exclusion techniques to prevent entry by pests into the apartment in the long term. As with the Mold Busters process, we built this process into staff's handheld devices so that we can review compliance with these new requirements. And we launched several trainings for our exterminators and their supervisors on these new techniques. We also put in place an accountability structure to ensure compliance with these requirements on an ongoing basis. This includes the use of data tools, re-inspections and observations by our Quality Assurance Department and our Environmental Health and Safety Department, and the Federal Monitor. We expect that a continued focus on IPM principles will reduce the pest population over the long term. In 2022, we had almost 15% fewer verified pest complaints from residents compared to the year prior, a strong early indicator that IPM is working. The agreement also requires that we provide an expedited response to pest conditions in households designated as pest sensitive. NYCHA now conducts outreach to residents so they know they can self-identify as a household where someone in the family has a respiratory illness, immune deficiency or suppression, or someone's health is otherwise impacted by insects or rodents. We are using this information to prioritize inspections and treatment in these households. We use multiple sources of data to ensure we appropriately tag these units for expedited service. Now I'll talk about sustainability initiatives. There are many other efforts underway that will help improve indoor air quality at NYCHA. Our range of sustainability initiatives not only help to improve service delivery and enhance the performance of building systems, but they also benefit the environment and provide residents and the community at large with a cleaner, healthier environment. Our agreement with HUD requires that we replace 500 boilers through both the PACT and our capital program. At many sites, both our PACT partners and NYCHA Capital Projects team are leading projects that will help us move away from fossil fuel-powered heat and hot water systems by deploying geothermal energy and electric heat pumps. Burning fossil fuels on our campuses contributes to greenhouse gas emissions that impact air quality. Through the Clean Heat for All Challenge, a collaboration between NYCHA, the New York Power Authority, and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, an initial $70 million investment will result in the development and production of 30,000 new heat pumps for NYCHA residents. This electric, efficient, easily installable technology will provide reliable heating and cooling for thousands of residents. NYCHA has also been partnering with We Act for Environmental Justice, our nonprofit partner, to replace gas stoves, which studies show can impact indoor air quality. Soon, 1471 Watson Avenue will become the first NYCHA building to fully convert from gas to electric use when all residents' gas stoves are replaced with electric induction stoves. We want to upgrade all our campuses with modern heating, cooling, and cooking systems. If we invest we can move more of our buildings toward full electrification, installing new appliances and cleaner building systems. I'd like to mention some other initiatives that demonstrate our commitment to improving air quality in NYCHA apartments. The Smoke-Free NYCHA initiative promotes healthier homes for residents and healthier working environments for employees by reducing exposure to secondhand smoke and providing support and resources to residents and employees who want to quit smoking. In accordance with HUD regulations, smoking is prohibited inside NYCHA buildings and within 25 feet of NYCHA buildings. NYCHA's Smoke-Free team uses evidence-based methods to provide education on the harms of tobacco and exposure to secondhand smoke. Project staff includes the Smoke-Free NYCHA liaison team of community health workers who provide strategic support at a borough level. NYCHA's Health Initiatives team also recently launched the Healthy Start at NYCHA program. This program provides supplies and assistance to expecting and pregnant residents. And like pest-sensitive households, we tag these units to ensure we prioritize repairs that may impact the health of our future NYCHA residents. Ensuring that our developments are safe and healthy places for residents to live is our top priority at NYCHA. We believe that we are making progress across many of the areas that I discussed today, from pest management to mold remediation, areas that are critical to residents' quality of life. We know, too, that there is considerably more work still to do and more investment needed to ensure NYCHA's residents live in the high-quality, modern housing they deserve. We appreciate your partnership as we continue working to promote healthy homes for NYCHA residents. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Oops. Thank you so much for your testimony and your work. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to ask their questions first, and then we can go to my very mundane questions after that. First we're going to hear from Councilmember Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, every time I hear these testimonies, read these reports, we would think that we live in just so well in NYCHA residents, that everybody's doing well, that molding is being dealt with, still a little more work to do, and we have pests. We have big rats that you call pests, but they're big rats, and they're in many, many residents. And so when I hear these reports, it doesn't match the reality. It just doesn't match the reality. When I go through Linden Houses, you know, Boulevard, all of the 10 developments in my district, it doesn't match that reality. And I just want to know, what are we going to do in the next year? With what kind of capital commitments are you getting from the city, state, feds? And how we utilizing the capital money you already have, and how much is that? And not that this matters a whole lot sometime, but I also find it interesting you don't have a black person up here. And most of our residents are, I mean, black and brown, but yet when you make these presentations, and unless y'all can find a black or brown person that will go along with all of this, we don't have any. If someone's going to be strong and objective and take the side of the residents, they don't seem to get in these high positions. So I want to have a real frank talk with you, not, you know, what you prepared for us. Molding is a serious problem. And in one of my developments, I joined people who had to take NYCHA to court for lead paint, lied and said they did testing that never happened, and didn't fix up places that needed to be fixed up. So when it comes to NYCHA residents, I just don't think that we respect them, forget as citizens, but human beings, because there's no way you would allow human beings to live the way our residents live in NYCHA. I grew up in the Lillian walled houses on Avenue D and 6th Street. For 30 years, I lived in a NYCHA residence, and I know what happens, what goes on with management. And some of the management is very disrespectful. They have no respect for the residents, and these are major, major issues. And that's because I don't think they think we're human beings of the quality that they might respect for the upper class. But when it comes to us, it's a whole different story. And finally, it seems like much of the capital money that's being allocated by the city and maybe by NYCHA is going to those who are in PAC. And if they're not in PAC, they don't get the same priority. So that's a way of twisting arms and convincing residents to get in the PAC RAD and I don't trust the trust program. So these are some very issues as NYCHA begins to privatize. You know, I support 100%. I don't support those 3 programs, but I support my tenants. If they decide to do that, we want to make them do it right. 'Cause even in PAC, we went to some of the places in PAC, holes all in the wall, apartments are being done over with the residents still in there. We had a case in Linden Houses where the workers that PAC hired robbed a tenant 3 times. And we're still dealing with some stuff. So, you know, on the ground, we're suffering. On the ground, people are living in very unhealthy conditions. In the richest city in the world, the richest state in the world, the richest country in the world, how the hell do we have residents living the way that they're living? So don't come with no flowery report, and then when we come to the reality, it's just totally different than everything that you just said, because I walk the streets with my residents. I go into their buildings, into their homes, and I know that this is not the reality that they're living. So I want you to address some of that. First, why come you don't have no black people up here? I mean, y'all couldn't even pick out one that would agree with you?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about, you know, the need for, I don't think any of us disagree with you that a lot of our properties are not in the condition that our residents deserve. It comes from decades of disinvestment. I was at the Boulevard Houses actually 2 weeks ago, and also at Linden Houses in Penn Wortman. I do think the improvements there are noticeable. It's very difficult to live.
Let me stop you right there. You noticed the outside, right? Did you
Yeah,
go inside?
We did go into some apartments as well.
No, when
I
you
do think
go
that there
inside-
are. Yeah,
No, I
sorry.
want, if you misstate something, I'm going to correct you. If you went into those developments and you heard from tenants,
I agree with
just
you.
on the outside it looks done, and on the inside is some cheap, superficial, facial stuff that they put up
Yeah.
to make the residents think that they got something good. Heating was a problem in all of those developments. Mold was still a problem. Holes were still in their apartments. So don't tell people quickly talk over it like, I've been to Boulevard, I've been to Penn Wortman, and they're doing all right. No, that's not true.
I agree with you that there's definitely a lot more work to do. You know, like I said in the testimony, we at NYCHA want every possible resource to invest in the properties. We think it's important that the building is rehabilitated to a state of good repair. I don't think that I would ever characterize the condition of the properties as being what it needs to be for NYCHA residents. I think all of us on this panel agree with that characterization. So I thank you for what you said.
I don't want you to thank me for anything, and don't placate me and speak like that to me. I don't like that. And I know everybody wants everybody to do well, but with the resources you have, there's been mismanagement with what you have, not what you need to get and want to get better, but just maximizing on the resources that you do have and the quality of management that can be done in the management office. Get rid of disrespectful, discourteous people that speak down to our people because they have a disdain for people who are struggling. So don't placate me with no superficial answer and thank me for anything. I'm making these statements so that we can tell the truth about what's going on in NYCHA developments, 335 developments, over 530,000 residents, and 177,000 units. We have serious problems.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Barron. I want to acknowledge we've also been joined by Councilmember Lincoln Ressler and Councilmember Mealy. Thank you both for joining us. And next we'll have Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon, NYCHA. So, Councilmember Barron touched on these, but one of the concerns that I've had and that I've heard from residents in my district who have not yet undergone RAD PAC conversions but are in discussions and who are getting presentations about the trust is what happens during construction, right? So thinking about air quality, what are the safeguards that are in place? I understand that NYCHA has requirements for contractors that do work at NYCHA, but what about during these conversion processes?
So we don't treat a RAD PAC development differently. You know, like I said, I was at a bunch of RAD PAC sites recently. There's a long process that we have in place prior to the conversion, that there are submissions that take place for an environmental review process. We also do a lot of physical testing and other testing of environmental hazards. And then we uphold a really high standard for our PAC developers. So we have a third-party independent mold analyst that looks at mold at PAC sites. We also have an environmental engineering firm, a third-party firm, that is our oversight entity for all of the lead-based paint-related work that happens at a PAC site. So we take really seriously our obligation also at PAC sites to make sure we manage the construction. We're very conscientious about the environmental hazards that exist at the property, and that we manage the construction effectively. And it's something that's very important to us. Obviously, I think the PACT program is one way that we have to rehabilitate properties. There are many others that we're hoping will be successful as well that are internally managed, like the comprehensive modernization program that I think you alluded to. And you know, we really want to have one consistent standard across all of our properties when it comes to environmental hazards and construction management.
Thank you. So to follow up on that, and if the committee doesn't already have this, would be good to just see spelled out what are those, dust and debris remediation measures, just what those protocols are and those requirements. And you mentioned testing that happens on construction sites. That would be helpful to have. My follow-up question, though, is how does NYCHA respond to complaints about construction site dust and debris? And in particular, have you noticed, or do you keep record of whether there is a difference between complaints by number of sites, just normalize it, but is there a difference by NYCHA Section 9 and converted sites, conversions?
That's a good question, council member. I mean, I'll have Joy kind of talk about the way that the capital projects folks manage complaints that come in about dust related to construction. We do take, in the compliance department at least, we take complaints from any resident, whether it's a resident at a PAC site or a resident at a public housing site, a Section 9 site. We also monitor mold and leak complaints and other pest-related complaints at both sets of developments. We do notice that when we invest in the property, especially at the PAC sites, when we invest in a comprehensive renovation, the number of complaints, like mold-related complaints, comes down significantly. So within a couple of years of construction starting, you see a lot fewer complaints. You see the ability to respond much more quickly. The complexity of the complaint is not nearly as troubling as it is sometimes at the properties that haven't been invested in. But the compliance department gets routine reporting from kind of everybody, and we do follow-up investigations in both programs. And I would say that's the main trend we see, is that as you invest, there are fewer related air quality complaints like mold and pests. But Joy, do you want to talk about dust control at NYCHA Construction?
Sure. Thank you for the question.
Hi, Joy.
Hello. I wanted to thank you for the question because we've actually invested additional resources in both addressing dust mitigation complaints, but also giving residents more opportunities to make complaints, not just through the formal channels, but also through community outreach staff who are making inroads at the development with the tenant associations and property management to make sure that construction is not a disruptive force. One second. Very limited number of our projects involve major excavation and movement of soil. But even so, we know that there is disruption when we do projects in apartments and around the buildings. So we have city, state, and federal requirements to follow code in our contracts. We have construction management on the ground. And we also have a safety and quality group within NYCHA that makes unannounced visits to sites to oversee where there are complaints. So if we hear a pattern of complaints, we make sure that that group makes additional visits so that we can respond in real time.
Thank you, and thank you for your long-standing service at NYCHA also. Thank you, Chair. I'll also say hi, Dan, while I'm at it.
I think next we'll move to Councilmember Ressler.
Thank you so much, Chair Aviles. Purina is always a very tough act to follow, but I have a few additional questions I'd like to ask. There's so many contributors to poor air quality in NYCHA apartments, from mold to pests, or as Councilmember Barron artfully pointed out, rats, aging building, ventilation infrastructure. But one of the things that's, I think, easy for us to fix are gas stoves. Cooking a standard meal on a gas stove in the Bronx results in nitrogen dioxide concentrations above what the EPA considers, quote, unhealthy for sensitive groups. A recent study from December 2022 in these Bronx apartments estimated that 19% of childhood asthma cases in New York might be prevented if households didn't have gas stoves. NYCHA did a pilot, I believe, of just 10 apartments in the Bronx that found households with induction or electric ovens had a 35% decrease in concentrations of nitrogen dioxide, 43% reduction in carbon monoxide, and residents reportedly were very happy with their cooking, importantly. So what would it take for NYCHA to switch out gas stoves in all units? Is NYCHA pursuing replacements of gas stoves in current renovations that are happening?
We'll definitely have Lada Kenneth, who's our sustainability initiatives head, come up and talk about the pilot.
And I can just offer some color. There are comprehensive modernization renovations happening in multiple developments in my district, and nobody's talking about replacing gas stoves, despite our pushing and prodding and encouragement. So that's the context of the question. We don't see it happening even in places where work is going on.
Yeah, I'll talk to the folks from the Comp Mod team. I mean, I think one of the things that it's not so simple. So, we obviously have very old buildings and very old electrical wiring, and so the electrical capacity isn't there to support stoves in every unit. And so as part of a comprehensive renovation, it's definitely something that we can try to do, but it's challenging because of the state of the infrastructure to try to electrify the buildings, which Vlada, you can talk about.
So if you could, sorry, I'm just going to have you identify yourself by name, and then we'll have you swear the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
Yes.
And just for the record, if you could say your name and title so that we have it for the transcript.
SVP for Sustainability, Vlada Kneff. Thank you for that question. We're meeting tomorrow, Councilmember Ressler, to talk about heat pumps. We proactively worked with WEACT when they approached us to do the pilot that you spoke about, 1471 Watson. Even before the federal government has released many of the studies that you're quoting and worked to monitor the air quality in those 10 apartments, and you quoted the results, it is very clear that there are reductions. Unfortunately, the installation of induction stoves is not that simple. The reason we were able to do it in those 10 apartments is because we had a weatherization assistance program provider that was able to provide the electrical upgrades that were minimal. We will need to upgrade the electrical infrastructure in the building to implement across the rest of the units in that particular building. And in the process, we learned that although the technologies exist, the state of the building, as Brad had earlier said, is such that the electrical infrastructure will need to be upgraded in all the kitchens. There isn't a stove that can just simply plug into the existing infrastructure. So
you're confident across the full diversity of the NYCHA portfolio, 150,000, 180,000 units, whatever that number is. There isn't a building that could handle upgrades to
We're
replace the
going to
gas
continue
stoves?
to look into it. I think that that's a valid point. There may be some apartments where electrical is maybe close, but it is, you know, it's a consideration.
You have
of
NYCHA
really
developments that were built in the 1990s. I mean, it's not, I mean, they were the most recent, but they exist. I'm struggling that you're
Yeah,
all,
I think I was answering a question across the portfolio. I think that, you know, there could be select buildings where, you know, it is implementable, and we will continue
is
to
that
look in
something
those
that NYCHA is
opportunities.
considering or working toward?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What
It's
do you
a
have to
huge-
show for that?
I'm sorry?
What do you have to show for that?
I would like to talk more about it. I think that we'll be making a more formal announcement similar to Clean Heat for All, and we are working with the NYSERDA and other partners to address your specific question.
I think this is an opportunity for us to directly address the health conditions of NYCHA residents, and is a question of political will and the resources that we're prepared to commit. Just as a final question, I'm very excited about the work that you're doing around the 30,000 heat pumps, and that's a meaningful number, but it is a sixth or less of the NYCHA portfolio. Is there a broader plan that you can speak to for how we're going to try to move more of our developments away from boiler systems and and kind of traditional fossil fuel and gas heat? And I ask that question because we're still investing enormous sums of money in replacing boiler systems around the NYCHA portfolio. And so it feels like we're putting all of these resources in exactly the wrong place for our climate future, rather than improving the air quality and making the sustainable investments that our climate requires, and that would be a huge boon to the health of NYCHA residents. So could you speak to the broader plan on heat pumps beyond this initial number, and why we are continuing to make such deep investments in antiquated boiler systems?
Yeah, we don't disagree, but these investments need to be made because, you know, the heating systems are at the end of their useful lives and they're in progress. There aren't technologies that compete with the cost of the boiler replacements, and that's precisely why we pursued the Clean Heat for All Innovation Challenge, to try to get the cost of those technologies down so that they can actually compete. And we shifted some of the funding that was dedicated to boiler replacements toward the heat pump challenge. So those are really important steps that we already took. We continue to advocate. We have released the sustainability agenda and the climate mitigation roadmap, very clearly identified each one of our developments. There's a public decarbonization map. If you look for it, it's going to show you exactly where we're targeting scopes for clean heat and clean domestic hot water systems, and we're using that as a tool for advocacy, both with state and city and federal partners, and for the funding that's out there through IRA and other incentives.
Well, I think we're meeting next week, but I'm really looking forward to helping support those efforts in any way that I can. And we met with Gradient last week to learn a little bit more about their model, in particular on heat pumps, and was very impressed. So we're eager to be partners in advancing these goals and helping to identify the resources that are needed. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we will have, we want to recognize Councilmember Chiose, and next we will have Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala.
Good afternoon. I'm going to piggyback off of some of what my colleagues have already said, but in regards to the construction debris and oversight, I had, I just want to get on record that at Mitchell Houses, we had a situation like that where they were doing the roof, and there was a lot of debris that fell onto the air conditioners of the residents on the top floors, and then they were advised that there may potentially be lead in that debris, and they had already been using the air conditioning. So, it had not been addressed until by accident, I happened to be knocking on doors that day and was, presented with this circumstance, and I was able to bring it back to NYCHA, and NYCHA quickly pivoted to the contractor and had them come in and look at it. But I think similarly you're seeing and what you're hearing is that there's an oversight issue at NYCHA. I think we all understand the issues, right? Mold is not good for you. Rat feces is not good for you. You know, construction debris is not good for you. Lead is not good for you. The fuel that's coming out of the temporary boilers are not good for you. We know this. Unfortunately, we're not monitoring with the level of consistency that is required to ensure that the human beings that are left to live in those conditions are not subject to that. And so I would like to hear more, because I think, you know, it's redundant to kind of go over. We already know what's happening. I have seen a tremendous increase in the number of complaints that my office receives regarding rats, which horrifies me. I have a lady that is a resident of Wagner Houses that had a rat infestation that required, you know, emergency services to come in and, you know, and remediate. But these were 2 senior citizens that were living in that apartment, right? And I wonder, like, isn't the manager's responsibility at the development to actually walk around, to get out of the office, to go through the development, to visit the buildings, to speak to the residents? Because I can tell you that's not happening. So you do have a management issue, and I just really want to hear, you know, if that's something that you're working, you know, to address, and what, you know, how often is whoever is responsible for monitoring these conditions doing that?
Thank you for that question. And I am not personally aware of the Mitchell Houses issue, but I'll look into it because that should never have happened.
Yeah.
Really, particularly before stormy days, but just in general, we require our contractors to secure their materials. There should never be anything blowing off of a roof, let alone anything that can be harmful to a resident. The field staff, either our construction management agents or our field operations staff, they should be in the field either daily or on a regular basis. And I can't speak to the property management staff, but contract responsibilities fall under me. My team needs to be monitoring the contractors. It's not up to property management to be on top of them. So we need to make sure we have the right level of oversight. And if you have any conditions like that, please let us know right away. We will make sure.
So how are you able to do that from City Hall, from your offices downtown? Do you have staff at every borough that is doing that for you, that is reporting back to you, or who's reporting back to you?
So every project is managed in the field, either through our agent. So we either hire a company to represent NYCHA in the field, or we use our project management staff, our field operations staff, to represent NYCHA in the field. We're currently managing about 600 active projects in various stages. So depending on how many projects we have active, we either have in-house staff or external staff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see how it's possible to have, you know, the level of oversight needed at that many sites with the current staffing ratios. And I think that again, that's what's leading to your management issue. Even when it comes to the contractors regarding the, you know, and the issue at Mitchell was, you know, we had it addressed. But one of the things that we, you know, highlighted, you know, during that visit was also that there were these nets that were put in behind the fencing because of the construction. And behind the nets, there was a huge accumulation of garbage that was also now very attractive to the rats. And in fact, there was a rat sitting, and I have the video, I still have it somewhere on my phone, sitting on the stool eating an orange while we were coming in and out of the building. Didn't move, didn't care. His buddies were, you know, hanging out on the side. But a lot of that was because of the garbage buildup that had been there for such a long time that I almost literally climbed the fence myself and cleaned it because I was so irate. You know, and so I don't have any reason to believe that any one of you sitting there, you know, is insensitive to these issues. I really just want somebody to sit through and, you know, and really come up with a comprehensive plan, because at the end of the day, these are people that have, you know, we have people that have serious respiratory issues. I have some of the highest asthma rates in my, you know, in my district. both East Harlem and the South Bronx. In the South Bronx, my kids are already, living bordered in between highways. There, and then I have portable boilers everywhere. I have complaints of soot coming from those portable boilers from tenants across the street from Metro North houses. That shouldn't happen. Families, because you live in a certain zip code, should not be subject to these conditions. They're serious enough that they merit an emergency response. And I think that that's my problem, is that in my observation, there's no immediacy here to really, treat these conditions that are literally killing Black and brown people. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Josie. I'm the Senior Director of Pest Management, and I just want to speak about what we're doing for pest management, making sure that we have eyes on a lot of different places. So starting in January 30th, all of pest management is now under the Pest Management Department. It used to be operated by a bunch of different groups, and because of that merger, we have people in the office who are able to close work orders, do things that are, paper heavy, anything like that. Previously, the supervisor of exterminators were doing a lot of this work, and that's not what they should be doing. Now they're shadowing their staff a lot more. They need to be doing it at least twice a week, along with inventory checks and all of the emergency things that come up, but they're able to do that a lot more. We have, and this is for each group of 15. We also have 2 administrators that I never see in the office. They are always popping up on staff. We also have our director of our exterminators, who is primarily in the field. The Wagner situation, you have myself and director was there when we had to remove the rat. Also, something that when Councilmember Aviles and we were at Red Hook, the communication between what's going on in the construction sites and us needs to be stronger. One thing that we've implemented within PMD just in the last month is we have a QA team of 10 people that work with our vendors. We use 3 different vendors to help us get to pest work orders in a timely manner, because we are slowing down because we are using IPM. All these work orders take a lot more time, but we're seeing less repeat infestations. But we use vendors to supplement, but we want to make sure that they're doing good work. So we have this team with them 80% of the time, watching them, making sure they're doing the caulking right, making sure they're sealing the holes. But something we've added with the construction site is this QA team on their report of every day, they do a walkthrough, and if they see any burrows, they note it on our report, and we send it over to Capitol. We're having, it's a monthly meeting to go through our tracker, but we're talking a lot more. This is a new process to really make sure that my team sees something, it gets reported. It was more like, oh, we see this, this is this. This is way more formalized, and I think that we're gonna have better results with this. I also, just to get ahead of a lot of things, so when our exterminators go in, they treat an issue, they put corrective action taken, they have to mark the level of infestation they see. Where for the high infestations, which is a small universe, we're making sure that we're going, the supervisors of exterminators that are out in the field, as those come in, they go and knock on the doors and see what other things are contributing. Because a lot of these, there's skilled trades that we need to escalate, follow-ups that need to be coordinated a lot more closer. We're already building in the follow-ups that are needed. Pests, you don't just one and done. But these high infestation proactive checks, I think also are allowing us to get more oversight and, eyes on what's going on.
I just want to ask a question, because I know that you brought it up. The extermination, does NYCHA exterminate every unit on a monthly basis?
No.
No.
No. We do not have routines at this time, but so one way that we're getting to a lot more apartments than if you just call it in, because we know that not everyone is calling things in. So if there's a mold inspection, if they see any signs of pests, then the extermination work order is put in, we go in. Also, the the maintenance inspections that happen, they see pests, the extermination work order is created, we go in. And then also, if the exterminator goes and, depending on the level of infestation, so any level of rats in apartments, any level of bed bugs, medium, high mice, or high roaches, adjacent apartments have to be checked. So the exterminator marks the adjacent apartment, work orders are created, we schedule it with the resident, and we go in. So it is not routines, and maybe something that we can work into in the future. It's definitely on our mind, but right now, this is how we're doing a wider universe than just call in.
And you're educating the residents how? So, I mean, because I don't remember seeing any type of posting in the building that says, hey, you know, if you have roaches or if you have mice and you're in need of exterminating, you know, please make sure to contact management. I mean, that level of education, you know, it continues to be needed. It's not something that, you know, people just, not everybody just thinks that, you know, some people have been living in these conditions for so long that it's been normalized, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're creating posters that are going to be around that, but is around preparedness for us. So it would definitely have people's mind. We're using graphics like, if you clear out your cabinets, we can see more holes. If you pull out things from your closet, so that would kind of address what you're saying as well. Mm-hmm. It's something that we're definitely looking into.
Mm-hmm. But it's okay. I get that. I just my concern is that, you know, most of the times the complaints that we're receiving at the district offices are from people that have been, you know, like the lady with the rat infestation. Like she had those rats in her apartment for, you know, for quite a while, and it wasn't until there was so many of them that she was, you know, basically locked out of her own apartment that she came to us. And, you know, we had to intervene, and that was how we got emergency services out there. That shouldn't have happened. So I think that, you know, that level of education is super important, especially when we're talking from, you know, about small children with asthma, right? What are those triggers, right? Roaches are triggers, mice, feces are triggers, dust, right? There are a lot of things that contribute. So, do you? Okay,
yes,
give me 1 second.
Before you respond, I just want to notify that I will be handing over the role of chair to Deputy Speaker Ayala in an interim period. Thank you.
I was doing such a good job that she was like, you know what, you just take it.
Take the job.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I mean, with Josie, we do require resident literature to be provided to everybody kind of when we do an extermination ticket. So there's a way we check also to make sure people are providing that resident literature to folks, because it is really important that people know that, you know, even if we treated it once, we want you to call us back if you see any other signs of pests again, and to stay on top of it. People should put in complaints. I tell residents all the time, if you put in a complaint, it helps us also track whether or not the infestation is happening in a particular hallway or from an index unit that might not be your unit, might be the unit next to you. So I do encourage people, put in complaints, put in tickets. It helps us, you know, look at the data. We look at the data in really sophisticated ways now to understand where an infestation might be indexed and happening. And it's really important that we get that live look at where people see any level of an infestation. And even when we go out and can just do an inspection to see where we think it might be happening, you know, in a hallway, it's really helpful. So definitely put in complaints, put them in all the time. We're happy to always go out and take a look and try to inspect it.
All right. Regarding the temporary boilers, do we know how many boilers are still oil burning?
Across just the mobiles or
mobiles.
Sure. So I think we pulled that number down for you. I think we have 44 active mobile boilers in the Capital Projects Division. All of them except for one are natural gas, so not oil burning. And then our heating management team, which tends to need to put the mobile boilers in places for on an emergency basis, have 25 mobiles that are active right now. That obviously changes day to day. All of those run on oil. Some of them are dual fuel, but they all can also run on oil. And that's because when we're putting a mobile boiler at a site, in order to hook it up to the gas, Usually there's a lot more advanced planning that has to take place. Sometimes we're doing that as part of a big upgrade to the whole boiler plant, and we can sort of design out also the placement of the mobiles and the installation of the mobiles. So for capital projects, they can do that and make sure it's going to be kind of a natural gas powered mobile when they site it. For our heating management services department, they're usually putting in a mobile kind of on an emergency basis to provide heat because of a failure of one of our very old boilers. And it's much easier to site an oil-fired boiler plant. But we obviously would like to transition, like I said in my testimony, we want to transition the whole portfolio to cleaner sources of energy. So Vlada talked about our heat pump projects. A lot of the installations that we're doing now of new boilers, new boiler plants, we're doing geothermal. We're doing a lot of decoupling of heat and hot water so that we can be more efficient. And in general, we're moving away from oil boilers.
And does NYCHA generally get complaints about soot, coming into apartments from residents that are living within close proximity to these sites, to these dummy boilers?
In my experience, my personal experience at least, the Metro North Plaza one was pretty unique. We don't typically see a lot of complaints about the installation of the mobile and the soot that comes from the mobile. I know that we did we did some testing and some other items with the neighboring property owner for Metro North Plaza. It was running efficiently. We don't think there was necessarily a lot of emissions happening from that mobile, but that was a pretty unique situation. I don't think we usually see that with the mobiles.
So was that the first time that you had ever heard of something like that?
At least for me personally, yes. But I think we do try to be really thoughtful about where we site the mobiles. So sometimes you'll see them, like I was at a property recently where it was in the street, but that means it was kind of pretty far away from the residential buildings, and that's usually really important. Obviously, with a tighter campus, it's sometimes more difficult.
Is there a requirement to keep the mobile units within a certain distance from a residential window?
Not that I know of, no. I mean, obviously, our goal is we need to provide heat, and we need to do it fast. So,
Understood.
yeah.
I get it. I just don't want to die of a respiratory ailment because I was cold and needed to be heated as well. I think we can do both. I think it's our responsibility that we're putting it there that we're at least, I understand the reason why. What I'm getting at is, does NYCHA even test, right, the air quality in those apartments that are in close proximity to the boiler units, just to make sure? Have you ever tested?
I know in that situation we did do some testing. Typically what we do is we do tune-ups of the mobile itself, and we try to see if we can run tests on the way the mobile itself is operating and the emissions that are coming off of that mobile boiler. So we're really focused on the piece of equipment and making sure the equipment's running efficiently. But our ultimate goal, obviously, when we install a mobile is to not have the mobile be there for that long and try to restore the plant if we can.
I mean, that's always the optimal goal, right? But at Metro North, we've had that dummy boiler there for 3+ years. At Patterson Houses, we had dummy boilers for, over 5-6 years. So, I get that our intentions, are one thing, but the reality is something else. And it concerns me that we're not proactively just, double checking and ensuring that the emissions that is not traveling into somebody's apartment and that people are now inhaling something toxic. I think that we owe them that much to ensure that we're protecting them.
Yeah, absolutely, Councilwoman.
So is there a plan to
I think I'll touch base with our heating folks. I'm not the expert on kind of that, but we can definitely come back to you on that.
I would appreciate that. That will make me sleep better at night.
No, of course.
All right. Thank you, guys. I will turn it back over to Chair Aviles.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I appreciate the quick reprieve to another hearing. And thank you all for your patience. I think on the heels of that, I think a similar concern that I've seen in Red Hook is, we have lighting concerns because of all the fencing on the development because of the construction. And one of the remedies to that is to run a diesel generator light all night long that is directly below people's windows. Clearly, that also emits very unhealthy things, and that's been the solution for several years now. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. And I guess, part of the question is, I hope this is not the case in other developments across New York City, but if it is not an acceptable solution when, you know, lights can be made, you know, electrified. We're not talking about stadium lighting. We're talking about being able to erect, you know, 1 or 2 posts. So that's more of a comment rather than a question, but not very good. But I'm going to take you back to some fundamental questions for the record to make sure that we're clear about certainly some of the testimony, and I have some questions related specifically to your testimony, but if you bear with me, I'll kind of take a quick step back. And I'd love to know, is there an internal categorization and tracking of complaints that implicates air quality? Is there, like, how does NYCHA categorize and manage that?
Sure. So the most typical complaints that we get from residents are really about, you know, a physical condition in their apartment that we know will impact air quality. So the most typical complaints that come into our system that we have, that I talked about in my testimony, are around mold and pests, which we know are indoor allergens that will impact people's respiratory conditions. So that's the most typical way. Obviously, a complaint that comes in for mold and for pests are a really high priority for us under our agreement with HUD. A mold complaint that comes in automatically gets a mold parent inspection work order, we call it, and it requires a set of objective measurements as part of the inspection. So every time you do a mold parent inspection work order, you have to be specially trained by a third-party trainer. You're using a set of tools, objective tools, to take measurements in the apartment, including you take a moisture reading of a wall, you take humidity readings, you're obligated to take readings of the airflow, so we know whether or not there's solid airflow in the apartment. So these are all things that have to take place as part of a mold inspection. You're taking photo documentation. There's lots of different folks who are reviewing inspectors' work product from the mold inspections. Dan and his team review it, my team reviews it, independent mold analysts from the Baez case, the Federal Monitor, are all constantly reviewing the mold inspections that take place. And we're making sure people do it properly, because the remediation plan that comes off of that parent work order is based on the objective reading. So if you have an objective reading that shows the airflow is not what it needs to be, it means that we need to go back and clean the vent, go back and check the roof fan, make sure the ventilation system is working properly, make sure the window's operable if it's a window, a natural ventilation building. So there's lots of things that we've built into our processes to check air quality, and the same goes for pests. So we've now built into our handheld devices a set of inspection questions for every extermination work order. It requires them to look at things like, you know, you have to use a HEPA vacuum to vacuum up frass and shells, which are a problem from a respiratory standpoint. It requires that they do things like exclusion work. Other kind of integrated pest management principles are checked off as they go through the process. And these are all ways for us to make sure that we're tracking if they're using any kind of sprays. These are all ways for us to track both remotely and then with in-person inspections, whether people are adhering to the new process we have at NYCHA to address complaints that come in from residents that impact air quality. So that's a long answer to a very simple question, but a lot of the complaints that come in are obviously about a condition in someone's apartment that we know can impact air quality, so we treat it with a level of seriousness.
Would there be other categorized complaints that a NYCHA would attribute air quality issues with as well, besides mold and pests?
Obviously, those are the two predominant ones. I mean, there are other things that residents can put work orders in if they call. If they, for example, have a concern about a gas stove or a gas leak, they can put in a ticket for that. But those are the predominant ones related to air quality.
Dust and debris, would that be categorized?
You can put in a work order for debris, for sure, absolutely.
I guess what I'm getting at is how directly NYCHA cross-categorizes things, right? If it comes in as a gas thing, is it also tagged as an air quality issue?
I mean, obviously, when we respond, our goal is to remediate the physical condition that's being reported to us as a landlord. So oftentimes the air quality issue flows from the physical condition. And so we are going in there and we do things that we think are the right approach from an air quality standpoint. But really what we're there to do is to fix the underlying issue. That's our goal.
Can you tell us how many complaints you've received this past year?
In a particular area or for mold?
You can go through every
Okay.
area if you
I'll
have
do-
them, or
yeah.
you can start in total and then break those down.
Okay, I'll do mold and pest, because like I said, those are the two that we obviously take really seriously. So for mold in 2022, there were 9,920 verified mold complaints, which is what we track with the federal monitor under the agreement. That's actually a really significant reduction from 2021, when we received 15,016 verified mold complaints. That's a 34% reduction. I think a lot of that's because of the ventilation program and other investments we've made in mold. And then for pests, in 2022, we received 40,702 verified complaints across the public health pest types. And that's also that's a 15% reduction from 2021, actually. In 2021, we received 47,799 verified pest complaints. So I think some of our approaches that we rolled out in the last few years are working to reduce the number of complaints. But those are the numbers across mold and pests. And Dan and Josie can talk in a lot more detail about all the data we have on mold and pests if you're interested.
Do we have similar complaints around construction debris?
We didn't bring that for you, but we can definitely try to pull that for you after the hearing.
Do you hold complaints around mobile boilers or any of the other kind of not as targeted air quality, but certainly?
I don't know that we have a way of tagging specifically to a mobile boiler in our work order system, but I can try to find out.
In terms of, can you talk to us a little bit about what the training looks like for NYCHA building management staff in terms of air quality?
Dan, do you want to take that about mold training?
Sure. So let me just pull out my notes here just for a second. Just give me a second. I got a lot of stack of paper here.
Got a lot. We'll
Give me
take
a
it all.
moment. Okay. So, our Mold Busters program, I think, is one of the best programs that we have at NYCHA. It arose from a place of trouble, which was the Baez case. But I'm happy to report the Baez case has had a real impact on NYCHA, and so one of the impacts was creating the Mold Busters program. So Mold Busters is a customized training program for our property management staff and our skilled trades on how they must conduct mold inspections, mold remediation, and other work around mold in our apartments. The training is, as Brad mentions, a third party, is provided by a third party entity. And it was designed in accordance with our independent mold analyst, which was appointed by the court. And everything is based on our procedure manual. I think the mold procedure manual at NYCHA is one of the best procedure manuals that maybe has ever existed at NYCHA. And it underwent comprehensive drafting and also work with experts and plaintiffs to make sure that it was a sound procedure. So right now we've trained, the training program for Mold Busters launched in December 2019, and we initially trained 2,870 staff on Mold Busters. The training had a pause during COVID and then restarted in September 2020. And since September 2020, we have trained 1,070 staff on remediation methods, 196 new staff on inspections. The inspection is one of the most, if not the most important part of the Mold Busters process that has to be done correctly and has a lot of oversight to make sure it's done correctly. We also have additional courses on inspections, such as building science, where 183 staff were trained, 429 staff were maintenance workers received building science training as well. Maintenance workers are kind of the first line of defense for a lot of the mold issues. We've actually started to have some of our maintenance workers actually do the inspections. Prior to that, it was only property managers and superintendents and assistant superintendents, but we're trying to alleviate some of the staffing issues and get more inspections done more quickly, and part of that is getting maintenance workers better trained on those methods as well. We have refresher courses, so we've given 430 staff refresher on inspector courses, and we've given Mold Buster remediation refresher training to over 2,500 employees. This is an ongoing training program. It's provided to new staff. soon after they are hired to enroll them in the Mold Buster training program. There are controls in the system in Maximo to make sure that only trained staff can be handling the inspection work orders, especially, so that to make sure that those are being done by the proper staff. In the early years of Mold Busters, the inspections weren't being done properly. Now I can say they're being done not only more properly, I don't know if that was correct, but also more frequently. We've done a tremendous job over the past year reducing the backlog of mold inspections. There was a backlog of about over 1,200 mold inspections earlier last year. We're down to just 400 active ones around that right now, approximately, that are all pretty new. We're really trying to get those inspections done within the required period of time or shortly thereafter based on the resident scheduling. So that is the Mold Busters training. I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how NYCHA is meeting the benchmarks set out in the HUD agreement or around the mold action plan.
Sure, let me pull out another new page. So I'm just gonna, at the outset say, if you look at the mold metrics, both in the HUD agreement and in BIAS, we're not in compliance with the mold requirements. And I can go through them one by one. But there is a tremendous issue. A lot of the requirements are based on time of response. And right now our response times to complete the full work, the full suite of the mold work, is too long. We're trying to take that in a comprehensive way by, I said, like focusing on the inspections, making sure that those are done in timely, focusing on mold cleaning. As Mr. Greenberg mentioned, we did Operation Mold Cleanup. We had a backlog of 24,000 cleaning tickets last March. We have done 17,000 of those and continue to work on that backlog every single day to make sure that the mold is being remediated so that residents are not living with the hazard in their apartment while they wait for other repairs. So I'll get into the HUD metrics. I'll pull that page out. If you give me just one moment. Or Brad, if you have it queued up, please go ahead.
I mean, one thing I'll say is, so the way the HUD agreement is sort of structured is you have recurrence metrics and then you have time to respond metrics usually in the agreement. On the recurrence front, we do very well. We actually do meet the HUD agreement requirement that we not have mold cases recur within a year in most of our cases. So we do meet that benchmark, which is really important because, like Dan said, our goal is to really bend the curve. So as we kind of do the inspections, if we were doing the remediation plan correctly, we want it not to recur again. It means we're going to have fewer complaints, which is what we've seen over time. So the recurrence metric we meet, time to respond metrics, that's where we really struggle.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sorry. So the way the agreement is structured is you tend to have in operational areas both a recurrence metric and a time to response metric.
Time to response.
So on the recurrence side, we do very well with mold now. We don't have cases recurring within a year of completion, which is really important because that helps us bend the curve from the number of complaints. For the time to complete metrics, we don't, there's a set of them. One of them is to do inspections within a certain amount of time, which we are doing much better at since Dan has been pushing inspections so well on the operational side. We still don't hit the metric, but we're doing better to get our inspections done within 5 business days. We also have to respond to whether it's a simple or a complex repair within 7 or 15 days. We have to complete all the work, and that's where we tend to really struggle because we have to sequence lots of trades, and the mold remediation plan can be quite extensive, and we can't always get into all the work done.
And is this an area where additional resources would make a difference?
So one of the things that we have tried to do over the past year in the BIAS case, if you set everything based off the HUD agreement metrics and the BIAS like baseline performance metrics, it's hard to tell who's doing good and who's doing bad because the numbers are all pretty bad. So what we've done over the past year is work with our independent data analyst to develop a way to become more efficient and to focus on those developments where we really see a failure of the BIAS requirements of working well, where there's large backlogs disproportionate to other developments, where there's outstanding inspections. So what we've done is developed what we call the Mold and Leak Scorecard. With our independent data analyst, it looks at 11 very practical factors, including resident satisfaction at that development based on surveys that are done after work orders are completed, to see how developments are scoring. From that, we've been able to track trends. The scorecard has been up and running, and also we've educated staff on how to use it. We've been able to see trends of where we need to deploy resources and additional effort at those properties and additional oversight to start to work at the ones who are performing the worst. In that, hopefully, by improving conditions at those developments, you will hopefully start to see more of a trend towards better performance overall, because we have certain developments that are really bringing down our overall numbers, and also the residents at those developments are facing perpetual issues with mold and leaks. So I think the resources have been added through the work order reform initiative. Now we need to deploy them more intelligently. Also, I think that the other piece that is really important, we will be working with the federal monitor. We will be releasing a report also for Congressman Torres later this spring that looks at where do we go now in Baez. We've made a lot of improvements. We've seen improvements, but we still see lagging behind. And we need to find ways to look into the backlog that exists and target work orders that are really a high value, plumbing tickets, tickets for tub enclosures in bathrooms, where we can really have an impact, hopefully, on where work is lagging. Because a lot of the backlog also is like things like paint work orders. That's the last step, and it's important, but it's not like critical to addressing the health condition. So I think the question is, we have added more resources, and we want to make sure that we're using them more intelligently than we have in the past, more efficiently, so that we can try to get at some of these endemic problems with mold and leaks.
I appreciate that, and obviously we want you to use the resources as intelligently and efficiently as possible. Nevertheless, it sounds like if the response times continue to be way too long, we haven't been able to fully address the backlog, right? There's still, it's not efficiency per se, right? I mean, where can you squeeze out efficiencies when there are insufficient workers to do the work or money to pay the workers to do that work? I'm having a little challenge understanding how this is an efficiency problem and not a capital one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely both. I mean, like I said in my testimony, there are physical conditions that we face in NYCHA properties that make the apartments moist or damp or have chronic leaks that lead to the mold. And at some point, it does become more difficult to patch those problems and kind of go along day to day with the existing level of resourcing. I think, like Dan said, there are things we can do better still on the operational front with the staff we do have. Obviously, there is a moment in time happening now with some of the plumbing systems, some of the roofs, some of the facades in buildings that are 80 years old, 70 years old, that have not been rehabilitated, where we've been working with our independent mold analysts to study what is the correct response to that. Are there ways for you to try to improve the plumbing system in the short term? Are there things that we need to look at from a more comprehensive standpoint? And so it's a challenge, there's no doubt about it. It's not just an efficiency standpoint, it's also a capital issue.
Can I ask, in terms of what is the current number of open mold requests? I think you mentioned it, but I may have missed it.
Yeah, so for mold alone, there's around 14,000 parent work orders, but that equates to about 29,000 child work orders, because the parent, basically the way that mold works is the parent is the inspection, and when that inspection is performed, it creates a series of child work orders. So just in raw numbers, if you just, yeah, I know, it's very, very nice terms, but currently speaking, if you looked at all the open mold work orders, there's really about, when you include quality assurance inspections and when you kind of go all in, it's about 35,864 work orders that are out of the Mold Busters program, and that affects 16,294 apartments. Just to break it down, because mold has a lot of complexities to it and how the work orders are constructed.
Okay.
And that does not include leaks. That is just mold.
That is just mold. And so in terms of, so what is the current average number of days that before remediation takes place?
So to close the parent work order, the current time to complete, based on our quarter 36 report, which will be released to the court, is about 290 days to close all the work orders. That does not mean no work has been done in the unit. Certain work has been done to assess the unit, to do some of the maintenance work related to it, caulking, maybe cleaning out the vent. But the full scope of the work has not been completed, and that is the current time.
So just, if you bear with me, I'm a resident, I call you, I see mold all over the place. Walk me through exactly what happens or what's supposed to happen.
Sure. And there's some important points here, actually, that important to get out. So you call, in an ideal world, a superintendent or another senior staff person who has mold busters.
Is this the ideal or the protocol?
This is the protocol. And what happens a lot of times, so.
This is important. The reason why I say that is it's important for residents to hear what the protocol and the level of service that they should be expecting, because as you have witnessed, often what is the protocol and what is the reality are far few in between. So I'd love for you to talk through what the protocol is.
Yeah. So step one, resident calls the CCC. They report a mold condition in their apartment. Step two, a superintendent mainly who's received mold busters training will go to the apartment. The superintendent will bring equipment with them, him or her, to the apartment. They will bring a moisture meter. They will bring an anemometer, which measures the airflow, and they will bring a hygrometer that measures humidity. They will take that in their handheld to go to the apartment. There's supposed to be really a parent inspection for every individual room to increase tracking. Our staff really love that. But basically, they have to do the inspection per the protocol. They take wet measurements on the walls, ceilings, and floors if necessary to try to identify any source of moisture. That could be from a leak, it could be from condensation, from piping, it could be due to humidity in the unit, the windows not being open, it could be from the mechanical ventilation not working properly. They measure if there is a mechanical vent, meaning a roof fan, there's not that in every NYCHA apartment, but there is, they will measure the airflow to make sure that it's at 25 cubic feet per minute, or CFMs, to make sure that it's adequate. And then they will also take the humidity reading in the apartment. They plug all this information into the work order. Most importantly, they also look for mold, and they've been trained to identify mold. And I know that before the BIAS changes came into effect, what was mold was kind of a debate at NYCHA, but it no longer is. We have about, I want to say roughly, I have it here in my papers, but I'm not going to go through, about over 70% founded rate. It even might be higher than that. We have that number of where they're actually saying, yes, there's mold. It's a founded condition. So it's much higher than it used to be, and we can monitor that remotely of who's saying founded not. So they do that, and then they create their child work orders. So if they see mold, that will create a mold cleaning remediation ticket. Depending upon the square footage of the mold, which is one of the factors they have to document in the handheld, that will either go to a caretaker X who's been trained if it's a small amount of mold. Generally, it's either 10 square feet or 20 square feet, depending upon the development that you're in. Or if it's above that threshold, but under 100, it goes to a trained NYCHA painter. And if it's above 100, it goes to a lead abatement worker who actually reports to me.
So it gets triaged based on what the observation is.
For the square footage, correct. Then there's also, if there is a leak, a plumbing ticket will need to be created so that there is basically an investigation of that leak. And also maintenance workers might need to trace that leak to other apartments, such as above. If there's a problem with the tub enclosure, which is, I think, a very common problem and one of my pet peeves, if that's coming off the wall and water is getting behind it, they will create a work order for a tub enclosure, which goes to a carpenter. So there's a variety of work orders that will be addressed. If it's a simple case, it'll be a couple, one for a caretaker X, maybe for a maintenance worker. But if it's the complex, it's going to go to a painter, it's going to go to a plumber, or it's going to go to a carpenter, and potentially all the trades could have some role, and also plasterer. The other thing they have to look for is water damage. That's the other critical criteria that will trigger child work orders. So that's an important consideration. If you get a wet reading above 599, that's going to trigger child work orders on your moisture meter. If you see visible mold, that will trigger child work orders to address the mold condition. And if you see water damage, that's the third factor and one that we've really tried to emphasize with staff that's sometimes underreported, but water damage from a prior leak, that also has to be reported, and that will be generally plastering work and perhaps maybe sheetrock work as well, depending upon the type of development. That process, the work orders get created, and then they go to the planning unit to schedule them, hopefully in a sequence that makes sense. One thing that we've tried to emphasize, though, now, and this comes out of the HUD agreement, which has a specific provision on this, we want to get the mold cleaned as close as possible to 5 days. That we're not close to coming into compliance with that number, but that was the intent of Operation Mold Cleanup, is that we saw a huge backlog of actual cleaning tickets. When we clean the mold, it has to be done with special cleaning that's been selected by our cleaning detergents that have been selected by our independent mold analyst. And they've identified those are actually specified in the procedures of exactly what the developments have to buy. And then they want to also see the mold-resistant paint applied quickly after the cleaning, because that will prevent the colony from reforming. So that's what our IMA has really recommended. That has not been happening, but what we're trying to do is turn the process right now. We're trying to get a lot of those cleaning tickets out of the system, and then we can focus on also the root cause repair. Doesn't mean we're stopping to work on any of those. That has just been my office's role this year, is to really try to prioritize where there's been failures. So the trades will respond. They will go in there. They will close out the tickets on their devices, on their handhelds, or they can also work off of a paperwork order potentially. The work orders get closed. When all of the child work orders get closed, it could be a couple, it could be a lot. That means the parent ticket will close. And that was that 14,000 number. That's the parent ticket. When the parent ticket is closed, it generates a QA inspection. So after the child ticket is closed, it generates a quality assurance inspection. Now, the quality assurance inspection for mold busters is performed by development staff. And they will go back into the apartment and they will basically repeat the same process again. They will see if there's visible mold, they will see if there's any wet reading, they will see if anything has returned. If they do see that return, they will create what is known as a re-inspection ticket, which will basically be additional trade work to be performed it basically restarts the process. So, I'll pause.
No, thank you so much. In terms of, so the QA only happens, the QA inspection only happens after the parent ticket is closed?
That's
Okay.
how it's supposed to be. Yep.
And for development staff is a very broad topic, a very broad categorization, or do you mean the supers?
The superintendent, assistant superintendent, hopefully it should be a staff person who did not conduct the initial inspection, but I can't say that's happening given staffing limitations. Okay. Somebody with the training has to go into the unit, and I think we've sent the message. You know, I was formerly in compliance. I'm now the SVP for Healthy Homes, that it's really important not to fudge the numbers on mold or to fudge your inspection. So they have to go back there, and they do create a pretty significant number of re-inspection tickets where they see that the mold is either returned or the leak has returned, and additional work has to be done in those apartments. And that's all tracked. We have very good tracking on mold based on the stack of papers, maybe too much tracking, but we have a lot. But the other key party here to mention on mold is the OCC, or the Ombudsperson Call Center. The Ombudsperson Call Center is available to all NYCHA residents. It was created by the federal court in the Baez case. The independent ombudsperson is Cesar de Castro. He is an attorney, and he oversees a team that is staffed by the independent data analyst, so separate from NYCHA. And any resident who is waiting too long for an inspection, waiting beyond that period of time when their work is supposed to be done, can call the OCC. They will open a ticket, and then they basically send that to my team, where we have case managers that work to basically unstick cases that get stuck either because of missed appointments or because of misunderstanding about what the condition is that needs to be fixed. So they've actually resolved 15,000 cases. And the OCC contact number, you can go on the web. You can go on the web and just Google them. But we try to promote them wherever we go, because we've been really, they've been an instrumental part, of how we deal with mold, to make sure that the urgent cases are being addressed and they improve our performance. So the number for the OCC is 1-888-341-7152. They have live call agents Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And you only want to call the OCC after you've called NYCHA and created your tickets, but they will follow up where NYCHA is not meeting its objectives. And they have very empathetic, well-trained staff that will then create OCC cases to monitor individual apartments and make sure the work is get done. And their final step is resident satisfaction. If the resident is not satisfied for reasonable purposes, they will require NYCHA to keep it open, and they will make us do additional work in those apartments to satisfy the resident. So it's been an instrumental part of how we're dealing with mold. It's a standard that we're trying to aspire to, and I think it's going to drive the change that we need to really tackle this.
So clearly you've made enormous amounts of progress, without question, and yes, there is enormous amount of work to be done. What is holding NYCHA back from integrating this function of resident satisfaction being the place we are, and or resolving these tickets in a timely manner without needing an additional layer of oversight?
I think that some of the lessons by the OCC are being listened to by other teams. So I think definitely think it's something that's having an influence on other parts of the agency. Certainly, I also oversee the LED program, and as we start to do our abatement program, where we're moving residents to hotels while we conduct the abatement in their apartment, which is also a change that we've done to improve health and safety protocols during environmentally sensitive work. We've noticed there that some of the residents have not been fully satisfied with the experience. Maybe we're late with doing the abatement, and they have some problems with the return to unit process. We're actually going to be making sure that we work with the OCC, because they are very good with making sure that resident satisfaction is really understood, and that is like sort of the final step of the process. I think the Pests Department is working towards similar protocols to make sure that they are also, and I'll let Josie speak to how some of what they're doing.
Compliance also now has a resident satisfaction survey, so every complaint that comes through our department is only closed once they've passed a resident satisfaction survey, which is a very simple, are you satisfied or are you not?
So I appreciate that. But I'm still left with the question, why? Why does NYCHA need the OCC to do the work it's supposed to do?
Because we weren't doing it properly, and we still need day-to-day oversight. I mean, NYCHA is working through a process where it is improving its operations. I think NYCHA has learned a tremendous amount, but this is a big, complex agency with big, complex problems. So I think that we are learning, learning from working with entities like the OCC, and that will improve our operations overall in other areas. And I think we can provide examples of that. But that is kind of the standard of where we are right now. And we're actually working with the OCC to expand some of their outreach, where one of the things that we've worked with them over the past year is they're doing proactive call-outs. If you have a ticket older than 400 days old that's a leak, we want them reaching out to those residents to try to see if they need an OCC assistance. They're also identifying, using our data sources, which again, mold and leak is very strong, identifying clusters of leaks where a particular line might have a very big problem on the line, but it's not being reported or seen because they're at the ground level, but they're looking at it from a bird's eye view. They will reach out to those residents and again, open up tickets if they are struggling with a line-wide failure, a line-wide leak that is a problem. So I think we're actually trying to expand these efforts because it pushes us to better performance.
Honestly, I would say that my 50 colleagues across the city who have NYCHA developments are also spending an enormous amount of time kicking NYCHA in the pants around the things they're supposed to be doing for residents, or why work orders or anything for that matter is taking absurdly long. In terms of, is there any prioritization in the process for residents with respiratory issues? Is that at all flagged or considered in how elements are tracked?
Sure, I can talk about our pest-sensitive work orders. So any apartment that has identified that they're using a life-sustaining device on their annual review, they've had a mold mildew reasonable accommodation, they've had a DOHMH CODA violation, or they just mention it to the CCC when they're putting in a pest work order. So they call in, they say, I have mice, my child has asthma. The representative can check the pest sensitive button. This automatically bumps you up in priority. So most of our pest complaints are a level 4, get to it within 7 working days. But if you're pest sensitive, the goal is to meet it within 48 hours.
And is there something similar for mold as well?
Yes, one of the things we track are reasonable accommodation requests related to mold, which is a frequent basis for reasonable accommodations, and that helps prioritize work. OCC can also prioritize tickets based on resident sensitivity to mold. We also have the ability to take on complex cases with contractors, and we relocate residents if they are experiencing a health effect because of mold, and then we can do the remediation when they are relocated. So there is ways that we also do that for mold.
Got it. And in terms of the contractors that you all utilize, obviously there are different sets of contractors that you use. Can you talk to me about how many contractors does your unit actually utilize?
Right now, we're predominantly using JOX contracting, which is line item contracting, where you have basically a predefined pricing for certain types of work, and we work with our JOX contractor primarily, but we do have other options. I think it's about 3 or 4 other contractors that have mold remediation licenses that we can use. But we reserve those contracts that we oversee for really highly complex repairs, either in apartments or also in community centers that have also had serious leaks and mold issues. So we do use the contractors for that work as well. And we have a very tight oversight with our team over that work. We also did the oversight of the roof fan contract, where we were pleased to see, given the efforts, and I don't want to take credit because that contract that started before me, and the team at Omar did an amazing job. Just underwent like I think a 9-month comptroller audit for how they managed that contract and the oversight that was done for the ventilation project. And again, for a comptroller audit, I don't want to speak for the comptroller, but I thought that they found strong controls over contractor oversight for that initiative, and we apply similar methodologies for what we do for our mold contracts that we use for complex jobs.
Got it. And for pests, you guys?
For pest management department, we use 3 different vendors primarily, but that's not the vendors that the contractors use, but our department directly works with 3 different vendors.
And I guess, how do you both manage subcontracting and quality assurance around a contractor who's subcontracting, or is that prohibited in the contracts for your units?
Well, Josie can talk about what the supervisor of exterminators do on the vendors for pests, but we also have a quality assurance department and environmental safety department who do routine inspections of jobs, whether they're done by a vendor or by NYCHA staff. And the quality assurance department does a lot of looks at the vendor work orders very often for exterminators too. So we have lots of layers of control, even outside of the two units themselves, to see what people's works look like and whether they're doing it properly. But Josie, you want to talk about kind of how you check vendor work too?
Is that the question, or a subcontractor, like if our
So you're, of the 3, if any one of them uses a subcontractor to do any portion of that contract, how is NYCHA overseeing that and ensuring that it has appropriate quality assurance?
Sure. They're not, but they could.
Okay.
We would know. We have 10 people in our unit, and that all they do is oversee. There's 10 supervisor of exterminators, 2 superintendents, and their whole job is making sure that this vendor work is done correctly. They're out in the field with the vendors. The SOEs actually their aim is to be in about 80% of the work, actually watching the work being done and making sure they put their notes, their photos of the work on the work orders, so we're able to make sure that, okay, this work was being overseen directly by NYCHA staff.
Got it. Thank you. In terms of, can you tell us how many employees the Environmental Health and Safety Department has?
Sure. So the Environmental Health and Safety Department has, I believe it's 48 active employees. I think they're budgeted for 51 employees. And they have, you know, it's a, I guess, a relatively small but mighty team. They have an environmental health and safety officer, they have a director, then they have 3 units. They have an employee safety unit, an environmental hazards unit, and a building systems unit. And under the environmental hazards unit, they have teams that are dedicated to indoor air quality, which is mostly mold and asbestos. They also have a team that does our lead oversight team, which looks at all of the lead-related workflows. They also have a team that does IPM oversight, so integrated pest management oversight. The building systems team has an elevator oversight team and a heat oversight team, so they really have specializations within those teams, so they can go out and see how the operational folks are doing, you know, across the portfolio. And they also have staff augments from other places too that they bring in for very specialized types of inspections and testing. So
the Health and Safety Department is over.
They report directly to the chair, the CEO now. The Environmental Safety Health and Safety Officer reports to the CEO, and that's a requirement of the agreement with HUD.
I'd love to see an organizational chart for this, along with like the distribution of staff members and levels. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, of course, we can get that to you.
In terms of, have there been reports or recommendations that this team has put forward?
Yes, I mean Dan and Joy and Josie and myself, we get lots of recommendations from this team. They're really excellent. There are some that they do as a requirement of the HUD agreement, so they do a root cause failure analysis for every heating outage that goes over 12 hours, where they kind of backtrack and figure out what went wrong, because for us that's a failure to go over 12 hours. They also do, they take samples of different kinds of workflows. So they, like I said, they have an IPM oversight team that goes kind of after extermination has taken place or during, in the middle of it, and they go and see how folks are doing. They do that on the lead front as well. I get escalation reports from them if there are particular employees or particular issues that happen that require disciplinary action. Mm-hmm. We also get a quarterly report from them, all of us, each quarter, that gives a set of recommendations for kind of business process changes or other changes we need to make as an organization. And then they track those each quarter thereafter. So we get tracked against our implementation of those recommendations. And it's a really good process to, I think, hold individuals accountable if they see something directly happening with that individual, but also, you know, operational units accountable to figuring out how to improve a business process or another way of tracking. And I'm sure Dan and Josie and Joy could talk through what they've gotten, but it's a good system of tracking recommendations.
Forgive the question. I feel like it's silly because I'm not sure I fully understand the organizational chart here, but how many of those team members actually interface with NYCHA residents?
From the Environmental Health and Safety team?
Yeah, maybe it's like a percentage. I don't need an exact number. I'm trying to understand
how
far in the organizational chart are they? Do they interface with actual residents or not?
They're in the field all the time, every day. That's kind of like their role. So obviously some of them, if you're working on like heating oversight team, you're mostly in the boiler plants and the tank room, so maybe you're not seeing residents in those spaces. But they do go into units sometimes if there are units that have a heat failure. So I would say the vast majority of them they're all in the field all the time. They should be interacting with residents. And you know, for Dan and Josie's teams, they're definitely in units. Right. Sometimes we've obviously relocated a resident that's part of a lead abatement job, so the resident's not in the unit when the EH&S person is there. But they're actively in units all the time. And we also have a fire safety team on that EH&S department, which is also in the field every day.
Right, and so it's 50 folks, let's say it's fully staffed, 50 folks for the 355 developments citywide.
Yeah, that's right. And some obviously staff augment vendors that we use for special types of inspections.
Sure. Got it. Can I ask, I'm going to switch to mold very quickly, I realize. What's the mold complaint inspection and follow-up process for residents living in RAD-PACT?
So I'm going to refer this over to Brad, but I will say that last year we negotiated a settlement agreement to have the PACT developments covered by the Baez consent decree. So that was a major shift, and I'll let Brad explain the changes that happened as a result of that.
Yeah, so there's a number of changes that I think have been super positive for the PAC program, especially with respect to mold and leaks. There's first of all, they have to produce an operations and maintenance plan for mold prior to closing that we have to approve, along with an independent mold analyst specialized in the PAC program who's assigned to the PAC program, who reports out and reviews those plans. So we make sure that they have basically a procedure that's similar to the procedure we have on the public housing side that we think is a model. We also then, after closing, my team takes every single work order that was open at the time of closing in mold and leaks, and we track them one by one until the resident's satisfied to make sure that they're closed by the new PAC developer, which we're doing right now at a site that closed earlier in January. And we track each complaint. We require pictures, we require phone calls to residents to make sure they're satisfied. We also have regular reporting that has to take place from the PAC developer to NYCHA that reports out on all of the open mold and leak complaints that were opened and what was closed, whether they were closed within 30 days, which is the time frame required under that settlement agreement. If they exceed 30 days, then they come to my team in the compliance department, and we take each of those ones in excess of 30 days for mold and leaks, and we call the resident, call the developer, see if we can kind of unstick the process, sort of like Dan spoke about with the OCC, and we either accept the developer's explanation or we don't. And if we don't, sometimes we do, like I've done field visits to see, what's the problem here. And we kind of hold their feet to the fire to make them complete the work. And we work with the OCC on that as well. And then those are some elements of the oversight process. We also have an independent mold analyst for the PACT program who goes out and reviews the work of PACT developers in response to mold and leak tickets. And they report out on whether people are complying with their O&M plan. So we think, we've built a lot in the last year and a half or so around making sure that we have adequate oversight at the PAC sites with respect to mold and leaks.
Do you know how many complaints you've received from PAC sites on mold?
I don't know how many complaints we've received. We can get that to you. I know how many requests we get that we have to investigate. And
Okay.
it's usually, when one of the PAC transactions first closes, we usually have a lot. Because it's very difficult to keep up with the demand of the mold and the leaks without the capital repairs. So, the most we've had has been across the PAC portfolio, which is smaller. We've had 16, I think, at the most that go over 30 days. In the last month, we had 2. So as the construction progressed in the last round of closings, we've seen the number of complaints exceeding 30 days go way down.
Got it. Thank you for that. I'll move on from there. I guess we'll segue really quickly again to pest management. Certainly thanks to your team who came out to Red Hook where there were clear infestations where some of the staff was like, wow, this needs to get treated every 2 days, not once every several months. And yes, what that visit illuminated was an enormous amount of work still needs to get done with coordination of construction and the pest management teams. And there was a representative from construction there that could help, but nevertheless, there was still like, is that you? Is that me? I was like, there's no fence here, so why are we asking this question? What do we need to do to make sure that it gets done? Can you tell us what are some of the proactive pest management strategies that NYCHA is using to control and prevent infestation?
Yeah, sure. So proactively, the mold inspections, if we go in, there's any signs of roaches or mice, extermination work orders are created. Maintenance assessments, if they see any signs of pests, extermination work orders are created. The levels of infestation when an exterminator goes creates adjacent work orders so that we go and check the adjacent units. We have grounds routes where we're hitting every NYCHA site. The developments that have more rats were there once or twice a week. Sometimes, Red Hook, we're there about 2 to 3 days a week, but we're on a route so that we're there, and that is not necessarily tied to tickets on the grounds or in public spaces. So we're able to rodents, roaches in basements. So that's a proactive approach on that. Something we've started doing is doing inspections on the high infestation, seeing what else needs to be done on those areas, and highlighting that. I think those are our main channels.
Yeah, obviously one of the things that we see, particularly with the rats, is trash. In Red Hook, there's no place for a trash can, or someone put a little tiny trash can for 6,000 residents. Doesn't make any sense. How do you incorporate trash management into these proactive strategies?
I can talk a second about it. I mean, it is definitely a balance between making sure people are putting the trash down the trash chutes.
If it's functional.
If it's functional. And having the correct amount of trash receptacles. Through the neighborhood rat reduction program, there were, I think it was $43 million put towards interior and exterior compactors.
Where did that go? Do you know?
That went to the neighborhood rat reduction sites. So that was the first set of neighborhood rat reduction site in the Lower East Side, Chinatown, Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, and South Bronx area.
Okay.
Well, Vlada, if you want to come up, you can talk. We have a huge waste infrastructure pipeline that we also have as part of our, we got city capital funds, or Joy can.
No, we're very excited about that particular project, but that's one development, right?
No, our waste infrastructure pipeline is going to hit, I think, how many? Couple hundred?
Oh, I'm thinking about the fancy anaerobic.
Oh, the pneumatic. The pneumatic is one. But we're going to have new waste yards kind of across the entire portfolio. It's a huge investment. If you want to go online and read the City Capital Action Plan, which lays out how we're allocating money across different developments for waste infrastructure. It also requires that we upgrade a lot of the interior compactor rooms, which is another major source of infestation sometimes if we have a problem in the interior compactor rooms. So it's a huge investment in waste infrastructure.
Got it. I look forward to that. I mean, I think our development, of course, I will continue to speak about needs receptacle. It needs basic stuff like appropriately sized receptacles for the level of buildings and equipment.
And one of the good things about the new waste yards, we're all way too enthusiastic about trash, but one of the good things about the waste yards is it's also going to encourage good recycling practices. So we'll have places for a lot of the cardboard and bulk trash, which tend to be a big problem at NYCHA sites, and other ways of also making sure that we manage the waste kind of across the whole campus in a more effective way. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I think it's going to help the pest problem. It's going to help the problem on the grounds. Hopefully they'll be aesthetically more pleasing as well.
Can I ask, in terms of the removing pests, I'm thinking rats in particular, but you mentioned for roaches using the gel and using less of the aerosol type pesticide. Is there an accounting of the cumulative impacts of different treatments being done? So let's continue to use Red Hook, for instance. There's obviously a treatment that's done for the burrows outside and in the soil. And then there's whatever's done in the building. And then there's all the construction debris blowing everything around everywhere. Is there any sense of looking at the collective impact of everything that a particular development is facing to understand truly how people are being impacted by what is happening around them and within the buildings?
You want to start?
I'll start. So, I mean, one thing that we've been working with a data scientist from HUD and also the Monitor's expert entomologist on is trying to understand a baseline of what the pest population was and is at every NYCHA development. We've been doing, Josie and her team do active inspections each year in kind of a sample of apartments. They also do burrow counts on the grounds to figure out whether or not, if the burrow count is super high, 1 month has it come down based on our treatment, which she can talk about. So there's lots of ways we try to track the data. It's challenging to try to count pests, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. But there are ways that we've developed with some of our experts to try to understand where we see pockets of too many pests and where we see kind of an inability to bend the curve on it. That's a good characterization, I think, of what we've done. But
Yeah, I mean, I do want to add that the borough counts are done by the Department of Health. We do our own borough counts, but it's not just us doing our own counts, and we do track all of our pesticide usage, and that's submitted to the DEC and the DOHMH each year.
Yeah, and as far as the Department of Health, Red Hook is good. So there's some clear problem with how it's getting assessed when we see the level of infestation that we've seen in Red Hook houses. In terms of construction, Joy, how are the contractors held to account for what are they actually accountable for in terms of pest management and managing waste, and how are they held to account to do those things?
Thank you for that question. I really have appreciated working with Josie over the last few years. The expertise of the pest management unit has extended beyond that unit, and one of the things they've done is partner with Capital to make sure that our specifications to contractors really reflect the best practices that they're finding on the ground so that we can be in lockstep. As you noted, at Red Hook, we're actually really collaborating. We're doing walkthroughs together. We're making sure that a space is owned by one party or the other to make sure that every area is being addressed. Sometimes it actually can be gray who owns a particular space in terms of pest management. The contractors are required to manage pests that are within their construction areas. The Red Hook project and the Sandy projects are somewhat unusual for the portfolio. Typically, we are working in a much more constrained area of a development, and so the contractor, it's much easier for them to understand where their area of responsibility is, whether it's a roof job or whether it's a site lighting replacement or a playground job. That work is embedded within their contract, but it's also part of what we talk about every time we meet with the contractor. We have regular meetings with the tenant association and the property management to make sure that we're all on the same page about what's going on and who's taking responsibility. And then on top of that, I think I'd mentioned earlier some of that oversight within the Capital Department. Within Capital, we have a safety and quality group of about 20 people that make unannounced visits, and this is part of what they're looking for to see if there's debris or to see if the mitigation is happening properly. And we certainly take complaints and observations from residents both through the formal channels and then through our community outreach teams to make sure that we're being responsive.
Yeah, and I will say, Red Hook residents have seen improvements for sure, and if there is coordination is not happening, they're going to demand it's going to happen, and so by hell or high water, we're going to make sure it happens. In terms of, sorry y'all, but I got to keep talking about Red Hook. It's just a perfect kind of case in point of a conflation of many things that certainly other developments are facing, particularly in the Lower East Side. The mountains of soil, they're supposed to be covered, but they're not. We've had not all of them, right? This is not a zero-sum situation, but we still see just like the same problems over and over again. What is NYCHA doing beyond us calling you ad nauseum every single time we see a violation? How is NYCHA monitoring this enormous contractor, right? Some of the biggest contracts we see in this situation.
So I'll talk about Red Hook, but I also just want to talk about the portfolio in general. In general, we are doing a very small number of projects that have that level of intervention and excavation. That said, going forward, the work that we're talking about through comprehensive modernization, the trust, we want to be investing that level into more developments. And so the lessons learned from these major projects is helping us guide going forward how we're going to monitor our contractors. For the Sandy program specifically, and Red Hook in particular, during the work day, when contractors are using the dirt, the pile may not be covered. It's true. If know,
The
and
piles are
that's-
not covered at night, Joy. Like, this is not like a, oh, we're covering our pile now, we're done. Like, they're just not covered, like, or they're like, there's a little strip of covered and trees growing through it. Like, that's actually what you see a lot in Red Hook, trees growing through the piles of dirt.
You should never see a pile completely uncovered overnight after work is done. That's something we really strive to push the contractor to do. The primary responsibility for oversight at Red Hook is our construction management agent in the field. So we've hired a firm who has boots on the ground every day. Red Hook in particular has hundreds of workers on site every day, so NYCHA staff we don't have enough staff to manage it. With in-house staff, we're using this construction management firm. They're on site every day. We also have project management oversight at NYCHA that we are both partnering with and overseeing that construction management firm. The Sandy program has additional resources of oversight, so we've actually paid for a third-party monitor. This happens in some programs at NYCHA where there's an extraordinary amount of investment. And so in addition to the safety and quality group and their unannounced visits, this third-party monitor also makes unannounced visits to look at the work that we're doing. And property management is again there every day. They're helpful for making observations to us if something isn't noticed. That both of those developments together are about 40 acres, so there's a lot of work happening in a lot of different places. And property management is a great partner in making sure that we know things are going on that we need to fix.
How much staff would you say you need to do an appropriate, not to suggest you're doing inappropriate, but to do a sufficient level of oversight and, boots on the ground to perform your function? How many additional staff would you need to meet that mandate?
On a program level you're talking about, or as a portfolio?
I think let's answer both.
Sure.
Yeah.
So on a program level, we have a lot of layers of oversight for the Sandy Recovery Program, which is the most impactful construction we're doing right now. And I would say we are trying to be as responsible as possible with the disaster recovery funding so that the oversight isn't taking funds away from the actual construction project. That's something we're very cognizant of. As a portfolio as a whole, we're actually trying to re-level the number of projects per project manager for exactly that reason. Compared to our partner agencies, NYCHA project managers have far more projects. And so we've been working with program managers. As NYCHA gets additional resources, often it's a large amount of money that has to be spent very quickly. And in that case, we might have program managers come on so that we're not overburdening project managers with even more projects. We're trying to make sure that level of projects per person stays at a reasonable level.
And what is that level?
Right now, it varies, but we have an average of about 14.
I'm sorry,
An average of about 14.
14 projects
okay,
per
I'm sorry,
year.
this real
Sorry,
acoustics
my
are
throat
terrible.
is just messing up.
So an average person managing 14 projects.
Project manager, yeah.
I mean, it's important to keep the scope and scale of projects varies significantly.
Very.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a particular standard. Would that be considered above standard in terms of?
So one of the things Joy mentioned is that we have program manager firms who take over kind of some of the pipelines, like our boiler pipeline or elevator pipeline with state funds that are at a lot of different developments, but they can throw more resources at it and manage it effectively. So I think most of the projects, Joy, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the projects that are managed in-house tend to be smaller projects.
Yeah.
And larger projects, we try to use a lot of other resourcing to manage, because you couldn't have one person manage 14 boiler projects, for example, but maybe you can for some community center projects.
Sure, so it's fluid. But Joy, I heard you say you needed more capacity and then kind of walked it back. So do you need more capacity?
So on the project management side, we certainly, we could certainly use more resources, but we also want to be able to have the capacity for additional funding when it comes in. I mean, that's the ongoing challenge, is we have a static number of people, a static head count, and we want to be able to be ready for when those additional funds come so we can hit the ground running.
One of the challenges that I'll say we face, and Dan faces it too, because Dan has a lot of city capital money for the lead program, is project management costs are not capitally eligible for the city or the state. So we really can't use a lot of the funds that we might get for capital projects for just regular project management staffing. And that means that we have to use expense dollars for it or other kind of federal dollars, which is more limited for us. And so some folks will say, oh, we're going to fund a lot of capital work, but we don't have the money for the project management side, and that's a challenge that we have.
And given deficits and, rental
The
arrears.
expense budget is very tight
It's going to
these
get a
days.
very
Yeah.
particular problem. And a very specific question, I think this is probably for you, Joy. Crystalline silica or silica dust has been identified by the US CDC as hazardous material that becomes airborne during activities such as cutting, drilling, or other construction techniques used by a project like the ones on NYCHA properties, particularly like probably Red Hook and the other Lower East Side resiliency projects. So what remediation measures does NYCHA require contractors to take to prevent the spread of silica dust?
I can speak to dust in general. I'd have to get back to you with the specifics for silica dust. But in general, we have techniques like wetting and tarping in very specific conditions. When regulatory agencies are involved, there might be a particular concern for construction workers who are closest to the dust, and they would have to wear particular personal protective equipment. And then, and also in very specific situations with regulatory agencies, we would have potentially air monitoring. At certain sites
Can
where
you speak a little bit closer to the mic?
Sorry about that. At certain sites where we've been working close to a building, we might also install plastic sheeting over windows and air conditioners during a time that excavation or dirt moving is occurring. I'll have to get back to you specifically about the silica dust, though.
You would put protective sheeting where?
Red Hook is a good example where we were doing excavation of foundations close to residential buildings. When we were actively excavating, in addition to the wetting, we would also speak to the residents ahead of time and put plastic sheeting over windows and air conditioners in order to protect any intrusion from the dust.
And is there, are there the provision of any air filter, air monitors provided to residents during any of that? Because the dust is pretty significant.
In Red Hook specifically, we developed our air monitoring plan in coordination with EPA and essentially mirrored the plan that they had put in place to the south of the site in the ball field, even though EPA had determined that Red Hook didn't have the same impacts from the smelting operations that impacted the ball field. So we followed their guidance.
Although I will say for the record that is under some contention for sure. I'm not sure people believe that in particular. Nevertheless, you don't have to debate that with me. So in terms of, what was, sheeting and then what was provided? Nothing?
Well, our goal, I think this is similar to the question about the temporary boiler and soot. Our goal is to control the dust where it's occurring.
Right,
So
and it
it's
wasn't
during-
controlled. So what happens when it's not controlled? Because it was not controlled.
So we did about 44,400 individual air monitoring tests at Red Hook between May 2020 and February 2023. These are 10-minute intervals, and they're done by a third-party air monitoring firm that's licensed to do this work with specialized equipment. It's not off-the-shelf equipment. And of that, approximately 45 tests, so 0.1% of these measurements exceeded our action level. And our action level doesn't necessarily mean that there's a danger to residents. It just means we stop work and take additional precautions at that moment so that it doesn't go past the 10-minute interval.
So these were tests inside people's apartments?
No, this is, we're not even getting to people's apartments before the dust even gets to people's apartments.
Because you can go like this, like, all
can
the
do that in
dirt
my
from
apartment, too.
outside. In every windowsill. Oh, look at that, all the brown dirt from the mound outside. But I appreciate 44,000 tests and they found nothing.
Well, we found at least 45 times we stopped work to determine if there was something additional we could do to mitigate the dust, and then that we were able to restart work and not have the positive reoccur.
And in terms of the Department of Health is tracking as well, or is this just the independent contractor through?
Well, the
NYCHA?
test results are on a public website, so anyone is able to review that material, and I can send you the link if you don't.
I've seen it before. We'll look at it again. In terms of, I guess, let's play out this circumstance. If, let's say, there were more findings of alarming things, you mentioned you stopped particular work. When does the Department of Health get involved?
The Department of Health doesn't have a formal role in this particular oversight. We're not following a regulatory agreement, but they've certainly been a great partner in places where people have had concern, and they've been more than happy to look at our plans or visit with residents who have particular concerns.
Got it. So if there were, I guess they are, if you bring them in, right, to maybe look at stuff and to collaborate on what you're finding, they don't necessarily have a formal role in testing and responding.
Well, so the initial testing of the soil was obviously done by EPA, so we have other regulators that we partner with around testing. It wouldn't really be the City Department of Health that would do soil testing. And likewise, at other locations we have New York State DEC has had to do soil testing. But it's like Joy said, I think they set up compliance also reviews the air monitoring results, and we also do on-site unannounced visits to see whether or not people are tarping the soil properly and whether the soil is covered. Sometimes we do find that there's broken seams or other problems with the tarp, but in general, I think it's like there's a really rigorous oversight over the project at this point.
Have you guys ever clawed back resources or reprimanded a contractor or provided, not reprimand, a financial penalty for inadequate work, very late work, any of the above, and certainly related to, mitigation or remediation efforts or inappropriate behavior or not doing what they're supposed to be doing?
We certainly have a law department that is available as a resource to determine if the situation leads us to a path of litigation. But on every project, we retain 5% retainage on the project as we're going through. So every invoice, 5% of the construction dollars are retained exactly for those purposes. In case work has to be done on the contractor's behalf, in case it's discovered that an error was made and something needs to be corrected. And so that's the purpose of that work, that retainage.
Could you provide for the record a list of all the contractors where the 5% was in fact retained for work post and or the contractors for whom NYCHA is in litigation with and or reprimanding or asserting financial penalties?
I think we'd have to talk through the request a little bit. I mean, we obviously have lots of back and forth with contractors all the time on the PAC side, on the capital side, in Dan's program, in Josie's, and sometimes we say, no, we're not going to pay for that, and sometimes we say, I'm sorry, please go back out there and redo this all the time. So we could give you probably every contract in some ways, but we do try to actively manage our contracts. So I think we're happy to talk through it.
Yeah, sure. I think that's exactly right. We are frequently receiving claims from contractors, some of which we reject and some of which we accept, that are well before that 5% retainage would be released. And so it's throughout the course of the project.
Yeah, I appreciate that will be a long, gigantic list. Nevertheless, I think what I'm getting at here certainly is what you hear from residents around poor contractors being used over and over again, and certainly a good number of documentation around contract overrides. And I know this hearing is not on contracts per se. Nevertheless, contracting oversight is a huge ongoing issue of concern, and it certainly implicates air quality, quality of life, just every kind of dimension that residents have to deal with. So I think
it's a bit afield from the topic, but we are actually working very hard to strengthen our training of project managers and to increase the consistency across the project managers for how they do that oversight. And so that's an initiative of asset and capital management that's being rolled out this year. Some of those trainings are under development, and some of those key performance indicators are part of this year's goals to make sure people are making it to the site and make sure that they're doing oversight with the same kind of consistency that Dan and Josie have been talking about.
Yeah, and quite frankly, our city should not be engaged in business with bad contractors, regardless of their affiliations and associations. Public dollars should not reward bad behavior and offer terrible work, but we continue to do that, certainly. So I'd love to, we can talk some more about that. In terms of, let's see, I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Can you explain a little bit what the difference is between the NYCHA Healthy Homes Department, NYCHA's Independent Construction Safety Unit, and NYCHA's Health and Safety Unit?
Sure. So Healthy Homes, which I oversee, is an operational department. We report to the COO, and we manage now 4 programs that do work in apartments on environmental issues. So we manage the lead testing and abatement program. We manage the mold program, obviously. And mold is it has various elements, but it basically is it's a quasi oversight entity that deals directly with the Baez case and the experts that are associated with it. We also oversee contractors doing complex jobs. We also have the staff that interact with the OCC. We do special projects such as the ventilation project. So it's sort of a clearinghouse for mold issues, and we do a ton of oversight related activities on mold and leak performance that's done by operations. 99% of the day-to-day mold work is done by plumbers, carpenters, painters that work for operations. Then I also oversee the asbestos department, which is also air quality. And that department does the asbestos compliance and abatement and testing for operations, not for capital projects, just for the operations. So examples of this are the floor tiles, which we've had a huge push to get better in compliance with the vinyl asbestos floor tiles, which do contain asbestos in many circumstances, and also the glue that is used to, the mastic it's called. So we oversee the inspection. If a resident has broken floor tiles in their apartment, we make sure it's inspected. If it has asbestos, we actually work to relocate that resident during the course of that work, and also the resident's belongings while we conduct the asbestos abatement. We also abate at turnover as well, at apartment turnover, which was a subject of last month's hearing. The 4th department that we've now taken on is water, which is an office, the Office of Water Quality, which is nested within the mold department. It's a small department, so we want to make sure there's adequate staffing and oversight. And they are overseeing Legionella response efforts is their primary role. And they're also building the water program out, new procedure manuals on water, sort of arising from the incidents of last summer. So those are our 4 program areas. Environment, health, and safety is an oversight entity. They report not to the COO, they report to the CEO, or formerly the chair. They were created specifically by the HUD agreement, by the SDNY, to oversee. So they look at my work. I'm the person abating the lead. They will send their inspectors out to make sure that we are meeting all the requirements, and they have a different reporting chain. So if there are conflicts or disagreements, that we can get overruled and implement, whatever recommendations they see. So they are an oversight entity. I'm not sure about the 3rd entity. I think that might be Joy.
So then the Construction Safety and Quality Group is part of Asset and Capital Management, and they really have a few roles. One is that unannounced visit, boots on the ground, oversight for the safety and quality of capital projects. And they also have an environmental compliance unit. And they are very key in the work that when we do asbestos work, they play a very key role in helping us follow all of the regulatory guidelines and permitting requirements to getting that work done.
Got it. Ooh, this is like the biggest organizational chart on the planet.
We're a little city.
Yeah. I guess the way to think about it is, we have operational units, We have capital units, and then we have general oversight units that are really trying to enforce
And then
a
we have
single
like
standard.
one caretaker who has to deal with
Correct.
6,000 residents.
Yeah,
I
we
get
try.
it.
Yeah.
I get it. In terms of how long does it take NYCHA to review the dust control requirements for a general contractor's safety plan?
With the dust control requirements would be part of the site
Like
safety
for a
plan.
general contractor's, I guess a safety plan or whatever plan they.
Sure. I would have to get back to you on the performance indicators for CSQ, but they would review that site safety plan before a contractor would be able to begin
And they're
work.
doing consistent, repeated, let's say inspections or.
Yes.
Got it. And if a scope of work changes for the contractor, is the safety plan also adjusted?
I think that would depend on the level of substance of the change in terms of the work. I mean, certainly if it would include any environmental concerns, it would definitely have to be reviewed. And if there's particular safety issues like requiring crane lifts or some other potential safety concern, then that would also require safety plan review.
So in terms of are any of the contractors ever required there's an obvious, like behind the fence, you've got to pick up your trash and you don't. Are contractors ever required to do additional, like janitorial services on the campuses? Or is it just their kind of work site?
Right, so the contractor's contract obligates them to maintain work areas. And again, this varies project by project because many projects are building specific or components specific. On the Sandy program, where we've had to do much more site-wide work, there's much more collaboration between us and property management, pest management, and also even within Capital, between teams, there may be more than one team active on a site managing projects and making sure that the garbage is being done appropriately. So various contractors have taken it upon themselves to hire more labor to do that kind of garbage cleaning, to have it done more frequently. But we're finding that even in places where we're doing it every 2 or 3 days, there's still an accumulation, and so we're trying to keep up with that as best we can.
Yeah, I had no intention on asking this question, but I can't help myself. Whose responsibility is it to clean the trash on the scaffolds?
That is a shared responsibility.
That no one is doing?
That it depends on whether the scaffolding is part of an active project or part of a safety mitigation where we don't have funds for an active project. So it's sites where we're doing local law 11 work, where the contractor is deployed to actively fix the building. They are on site regularly and they are doing that work on it should be a daily basis or a regular basis. But there are sites where unfortunately we don't have the funding to do the local law 11 repairs. The scaffolding is installed as soon as possible as part of complying with the Department of Buildings requirements, but there is no staffing on site from that scaffolding company. And so there is much more of a collaboration with property management to make sure that we can maintain those sites over time.
So again, in the case of Red Hook, where we have scaffolding everywhere, and a huge accumulation of trash on all the scaffolding, it implicates pests and other fun situations. There is no money and it just sits there.
I believe Red Hook has funding for some of the local law 11 work. I can't speak offhand to which buildings, but Red Hook's a great example of where we have that kind of coordination, where certain buildings are going to be under active construction, other buildings we might have only had the funding to put up the sidewalk shedding, I think is what you're referring to, around the buildings to prevent debris from potentially hitting residents. And then the fencing is sometimes installed in lieu of sidewalk sheds. So in order to reduce the amount of shedding which people have said they find dark, and that we put in the fencing to keep people out of larger areas near the buildings where we aren't able to do the repairs right away due to funding.
Got it. You see how much I love the shedding in Red Hook that's sitting there with tons and tons of trash. It's a thing. I guess, I think with that, we're gonna check in. Oh, yeah, oh, good. Yes. In terms of, can you tell us a little bit about what soil testing does NYCHA and/or any contractors hired by NYCHA undertake when they do construction that would disturb the soil on NYCHA property?
I'm going to start, but I'm actually going to hand it over to Vlada because her group really manages this. And this is an evolving process for us. So we are actually in the process of improving this very piece. NYCHA follows the city, the state, and the federal, so SECRA, and NEPA. But what we have is a two-phase process. And we're going to introduce another acronym to you for another group that is doing oversight of environmental concerns.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joy. The team recently came over to work under my portfolio, so we are closely looking at whenever there's soil disturbance and capital work, we follow NEPA, SECRA, and SECRA, as Joy has just mentioned. When there are triggers that require compliance with those requirements, we conduct a phase 1 desktop analysis to see if there are environmental concerns in the area, if there are underground storage tanks, if there are spills, if there is industrial. We work with DEP to do that analysis, and then if DEP recommends, we move on to a phase 2 and do testing of the soil of the area where the disturbance would be happening. And based on the results of the phase 2 report, there would be a recommendation if other measures need to be taken, if we need to cap the soil, if it needs to be, 2 feet needs to be taken out and new clean soil need to be put in, if any venting needs to happen. So all of that happens in a phase 2.
And are those results provided to the public?
They go
easily accessible place.
So they go through a process. DEP looks at the results with us. I don't know if there's a repository for all these files, but I can get back to you.
I will say, there are some sites that are actively managed by a regulator. So, like, there are parts of Reese houses, not all of Reese houses, but parts of Reese houses that's under a DEC interim site management plan that's based on DEC's testing of the soil from a few years back. That's all publicly available. DEC makes that available. There is other testing that happens at NYCHA sites that has been done by regulators that's publicly available too. So it varies based on the project, the regulatory oversight that exists for a particular site, and kind of what the particular project is that's happening, whether it's disturbing the soil. I know it's a hard answer, but that's really how it's how.
But in terms of so for a project with DEC, they are in charge of reporting it. NYCHA doesn't necessarily say, "Hey, residents, are you interested in here's the link to where you can find."
So DEC. So for example, the Reese houses is a former manufactured gas plant from the 1850s.
Yep.
It's like portions of the basically northeast part of the property, the campus, that are part of the interim site management plan. I think DEC has done a lot of sessions with residents. They should, it would be great if they did more. We definitely talk to residents a lot about it. It does kind of sometimes come down to a different entities doing the testing, and I don't think, we don't always have the ability to say, okay, go to DEC, because I think it's a more confusing place even than just coming in.
Totally, and if it's comprehensible, right? If you need a PhD program to discern the 5 font of numbers that don't make sense.
Yeah, they're very long documents, and they're sometimes challenging to navigate. So I think we can come up with ways to make it more accessible.
Yeah, I think the tenants merit that, particularly environmental justice communities, right? They're facing, that is only but one component of pollutants that they're dealing with on a daily basis, and deserve to get the full scope of what is happening to them and their families. And what they're exposed to, quite frankly, in discernible ways. So I would love to see publicly available information for residents. I would like to go back to Ms. Eldon's comments at the top of the meeting where she mentioned the replacement of, these roofs. Can you walk us through what is NYCHA supposed to be doing in terms of informing residents? Not only informing them of the entire process, but, the protocols and what will happen with 7 layers of ancient roofs with a whole lot of asbestos to those residents. And not just the top 2 residents, right? The whole building, asbestos will fly in the air. So what's gonna happen to those residents? What can they expect in terms of information and support to ensure their health and safety?
Well, you've heard a lot today about new standard procedures that the agency has rolled out, and that is also true for stakeholder management and stakeholder communication in the Asset and Capital Management Department. So what we're finalizing now is actually having increased touch points with both the resident leadership and the residents and property management to make sure that everybody's really on the same page about projects. This includes during the planning phase, during the procurement phase, when there's a construction start, and then at certain points during construction. The tenant association president is always invited to the recurring meetings, and then there's also other touch points with the residents during their resident leadership meetings on site, and with the stakeholders for that development, which may include not just residents, but community centers, senior centers, and other providers. With asbestos specifically, prior to any abatement, NYCHA will use the services of an environmental service vendor. And so these provide Department of Labor licensed asbestos project monitors to oversee the abatement, to operate and monitor the air monitoring equipment, and ensure compliance with all applicable regulations. And before that, we have that step where the contractor has to submit a plan to the environmental compliance unit. So there's really a multi-phased approach. That plan that goes to the environmental compliance unit is, and again, I'll get back to you about the turnaround times, but that's reviewed for compliance with all of the oversight agency requirements to make sure that that third-party monitoring firm is appropriate and is licensed, and then to make sure that the plan is being followed. We have the oversight pieces of NYCHA doing those unannounced visits in addition to the project management teams.
And will any of the residents there have to be moved while they're replacing these roofs?
I don't know enough about this project, so I'd have to get back to you. Typically, we do not have to move residents for a typical roof replacement. We are able to put down, we are able to require the contractors to phase their removal such that there aren't large swaths of roof that are not protected at any particular period of time. And we're also very cognizant of weather. So we try to schedule the roofing replacement so that it's not during the winter seasons.
So how does NYCHA ensure that the residents' air quality is safe? You have the contractor obviously say they're going to agree to these certain things, but is there any way that NYCHA actually definitively knows whether or not there is contamination coming from these projects? Is there any proactive monitoring happening?
So again, we're dealing with that at the root source. So at the project, there have to be dust mitigation and debris control measures. Those are overseen by the construction manager or project manager who visit the site, and then we are held in check by other parts of the agency and monitoring that occurs with unannounced visits where we're given feedback on the work that we're doing.
There's no, is there air monitoring happening?
So if it's during an asbestos, if it's asbestos contaminated material, obviously we have to do air monitoring during the abatement. And if we're going to disturb the material, we have to do air monitoring as well, which is not done by the contractor, it's done by a third party. So there's air monitoring that, if it's specific to asbestos, that is a requirement that we have.
Got it. So there will be air monitoring done here.
I honestly don't know enough about the project to know whether
Sure.
we've done an investigation for asbestos and if we found it, but we can certainly look into
Well,
it.
if we can commit to Ms. Eldon to certainly follow up with a clear protocol, I'll
Yeah,
be.
And I will say, yeah, it's also overseen by DEP, Tansan, which is true. So the other thing I'll say is it's been really heartening to watch for the ANCM team. They do have these progress meetings now, and every couple weeks, the Tenant Association Board is invited to the meeting to kind of sit in on the project, hear what the 2-week look ahead looks like, hear about kind of what's happening. So I've had a lot of residents give me really positive feedback about that process for some of the boiler projects. I do think they're doing a lot more stakeholder engagement and trying to keep people informed about what's happening. And it's really important because it's obviously where residents live and there's a lot of work happening at NYCHA. The good thing is we've gotten a lot of money, but not enough, but we've gotten a lot, and there's a lot more work happening. So the stakeholder engagement is catching up to all the work that's happening, I think.
Unfortunately, I know Ms. Eldon wants to jump in here, but I think it's against protocol, Ms. Eldon, so we're at the end, okay. Oh, yeah, Ms. Eldon, at the end, as we close out the panel, I'd happy to have you jump in again, okay? Oh, yes. Thank you. Has NYCHA explored entering any partnerships with federal state agencies such as OSHA to produce standard construction safety protocols?
Well, OSHA is our Bible. We have to abide by OSHA guidelines and requirements, and we measure our TCIR, which now, of course, I'm blanking on what it means, but we measure our safety record according to their rules. Generally speaking, NYCHA is safer than the state and the country, but not always. And we're working very hard to keep our safety record as good as possible.
We're doing partnerships, I will say, all the time. So like Joy said, we partnered with EPA. Red Hook, Vlada's team is partnering all the time with NYPA and NYSERDA on some of the sustainability initiatives. Anybody that wants to partner with NYCHA, our door's open, I promise.
Yeah, I guess similar, not only partnership, but what funding sources is NYCHA drawing on in terms of like federal pockets of funding for any of these particular areas?
We're open to any funding source, so anybody that's got money.
I appreciate that. Everybody's open, but not everybody is applying, right? Like this is a very common response we get from agencies. We get the response of, oh, we need money, but we'll never say it. Sometimes, right? Yeah. And we'll take any money, but we won't necessarily apply, or there's no real like evidence around why we aren't maximizing drawing down on different funding parts. And that could be for very legitimate reasons, right? Like not having adequate staff to actually do that work. Yeah. I don't know. But what we'd like to see is clear evidence of where NYCHA is actually drawing down those pots of resources. So that if there is an instance where we can complement and certainly advocate to maximize those resources like we do every single day, because the situation is a real one, and we want to have the sufficient resources for our residents, right? So I'd love to see very tangible evidence around what that actually is. Where are we drawing funding from? Where can we also partner with elected officials to make sure that they are weighing in and supporting those applications? I have never heard one of my colleagues say that they have weighed in to an application from NYCHA to a federal or state agency around a particular program. And maybe that's because I'm new. But that's the challenge for you to debate.
Yeah, we'll have Vlada talk about some of the grant applications we're putting in now. I will say we've won a lot of grant applications in the last couple of years for HUD resources, for state.
Yes, and I know Vlada's the star candidate here, so I'm not so sure.
Well, you might regret saying that because we might ask you for a quote now for every application.
I want more. I want more.
Good. Go ahead, Vlada.
My team is actually applying for a grant today that's due at 5 o'clock. So
Your team is good. So you brought your star player to the press, and you're another star player. But I appreciate that. Tell us, because residents do want to know that, and I will say, your work has been one of the few where it's like clear that is happening. But we haven't been very clear about where we deploy our collective power to make sure that NYCHA is in fact maximizing resources from all these other venues.
yeah, I think that it's going to become even more clear, right? Because there's a lot of funding out there, and my team, together with my colleagues here around the table, we're looking at all the opportunities. There's a lot of funding coming out of IRA, the EPA GHG fund, the CPC fund. So we're watching every single opportunity. We're trying to figure out how to go after it. We've gotten quite a bit of it through the Weatherization Assistance Program. There's a funding that comes from the state, and we match. We also finance through the energy performance contracts in partnership with HUD, so we're always very creative. We got a letter of support from Richie Torres on the geothermal grant that we applied for with the federal government. We have a partnership with National Grid that is demonstrating a thermal energy network. They went public in the rate case, so that's out there. That's, $38 million in Vandalia Avenue in Brooklyn. So, these are things that are, they're small on their own, but they add up.
Yeah.
And they're really important. They're really important to our community. So, I think that it is a little bit easier for me to go after this funding because we've been thinking about some of this work creatively and over the years, and to the extent that we can bring that value to our residents, it's really, really important. But it's not done just by my team. It's done in partnership, and there's a lot of conversation around how do we be strategic about going after this funding.
And I think that you asked a good question in terms of support. So Vlada did not mention all of the applications she's been working on behalf of the Capital Group, but one of the challenges for NYCHA, particularly for the federal applications, is if there's a local match, we're a federally funded agency. And so we really find ourselves in a position where you have to apply for things maybe multiple years in advance and align it with our existing capital program, and then we really have to have a local match that we can rely on, and that's something we are very very cognizant of.
Yeah, no, and thank you for pointing that out. I mean, I know these are not without complexities, and clearly NYCHA is one of the more complex entities because of its funding structure and its actual structure. But I think the point I hope you hear is that we want to be able to support you, to support the authority to maximize any pot that it can to ensure that we get the best and fastest, most effective services for the residents who, in many circumstances, are living in unacceptable conditions. Just no other way to put it. And so,
yeah, we agree.
So we thank you for that.
I don't think I gave credit to the Deputy Mayor, Joshi of Operations. She's been supporting us also on many of the applications. I have to give her credit.
Great. Well, thank you. I think with that, I think we'll follow up with some other additional questions later. I think. I think we'll turn to public testimony. Thank you for bearing with us through these questions, and more to come. We will certainly follow up on the things we've talked about today.
Appreciate it.
So we'll be moving on to public testimony. We'll start with any members of the public who are here present, and then we will move on to any members of the public that are on Zoom. Our first panel will be Michael O'Hara and Lonnie Portis, followed up by...
I think Lonnie left. Lonnie's here.
Followed by Lavelle Shaw and Christopher Morris, my apologies, Pori, I believe. If you all want to make your way up to the desk, and then we can... So So start with Mr. O'Hara. There'll be the Sergeant at Arms will have a timer, but we will obviously, the chair will follow up with questions as she would like. You can go ahead, Mr. O'Hara.
Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I good now?
You're good.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael O'Hara. I'm a second-year law student at the Elizabeth Haub School of Law at Pace University in White Plains, New York. I'm an intern for the New York Environmental Law and Justice Project, also known as the Environmental Justice Initiative, led by Mr. Joel Kupperman. Regarding air quality at NYCHA properties, I wish to specifically address the Jacob Riis houses. Located on the Riis property is a state brownfield site, which has site code 231110. FEMA resiliency construction activities at this site have caused the soil to be greatly disturbed and become piled up in front of the apartments and the windows at the Riis properties. A 2007 report prepared for Con Edison took soil samples from the Riis property, and arsenic levels were found to be 2 or 3 times higher than the threshold level for the DEC soil cleanup objectives in 9 of the 12 samples taken. Thus, NYCHA has notice of the alarmingly high levels of arsenic and other heavy metals within this development. NYCHA's failure to ensure that the soil is covered means that children are playing in it, the soil is running off into the sewers, people can walk through it and bring it into their homes, and it can of course be blown into the windows and air conditioning units, as it is quite literally right next to the apartments. We're exceptionally concerned about the death of Ms. Josefa Bonet. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. She was a Riis Project resident who died in October of 2022 with 4 times the acceptable limit of arsenic in her blood. Her physician, Dr. Rain of Mount Sinai, made the prudent request to the state and the city to have all Riis residents tested out of concern following this patient's death, and failure to do so is hiding the facts from Riis residents of what is in the air that they're breathing. He wasn't asking for an entire evaluation, just a simple 24-hour urine collection, which is standard for arsenic testing. Inorganic arsenic is commonly found in rodenticides. It doesn't degrade and it can remain in the soil indefinitely. NYCHA has not taken any initiative to test Riis House residents for arsenic, lead, or any other heavy metals. According to the World Health Organization, long-term health effects of arsenic exposure include cancer, developmental effects, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, adverse pregnancy outcomes, and infant mortality. These air quality concerns do not only impact the residents of Jacob Riis House residents, they impact the health of construction workers for the resiliency projects and Riis employees. OSHA reached out to NYCHA as part of the OSHA Strategic Partnership Program and offered to perform an inspection at no cost to NYCHA. They agreed to this and then pulled out of this. Had they found anything, they do defer penalties to allow NYCHA to remedy the situation, and they hadn't. The New York State Constitution now says that all New Yorkers have a right to clean air, water, and a healthy environment. We are asking NYCHA to take this crisis seriously. One death is too many. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lonnie Portis.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lonnie Portis, the Environmental Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at WE ACT, excuse me, WE ACT for Environmental Justice. I'll try to keep my comments here brief. However, WE ACT will be submitting a detailed written testimony after this hearing. WE ACT convenes a group of members living in NYCHA developments to discuss and organize around the various environmental health hazards that currently exist in their homes and communities. NYCHA faces many problems and challenges, as we discussed today, most of which are tied to the fact that it has been chronically underfunded for years. As a result, the New Yorkers who rent apartments in NYCHA developments often have disproportionately endured environmental challenges such as mold, lead, asbestos, and pests, along with the substandard service in terms of repairs and basic issues. According to a NYCHA presentation given to Manhattan Community Board 10 on January 23rd of this year, out of the approximately $40 billion in capital needs for NYCHA, over 40% of that is estimated for remediating environmental health hazards like lead, mold, and pests, all of which negatively impact health of residents, resulting in increased hospitalizations and medical expenses. NYCHA residents deserve to live in safe and healthy homes. Living in a healthy environment is key to gaining social capital and strengthening residents' physical and mental health. That's why WE ACT is testifying in support of Resolution 190, which calls for the New York State Legislature and Governor to do their part and invest in the health and safety of NYCHA residents by providing additional $3 billion annually to address capital needs resulting from decades of disinvestment into its building stock. We all know this type of neglect is considered unacceptable in private housing. It should also be unacceptable in public housing, and the state must do right by public housing residents. In addition, we strongly urge this committee to hold an oversight hearing on NYCHA's sustainability agenda, which, I quote, says, the agenda details the commitments that NYCHA will make over the next 10 years to improve resident well-being and operate in an effective and efficient landlord. This includes indoor air quality issues as mold, pests, secondhand smoke, VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, and lead. It's been 6 years. This council, the public, and NYCHA residents deserve to know how committed NYCHA has been to their commitments that they stated in their NYCHA sustainability agenda. Oversight and accountability is key to improving the lives of nearly 600,000 New Yorkers. Public housing residents should not be an afterthought to elected officials at the city, state, or federal level. There's no environmental, social, or housing justice if public housing residents are not included and prioritized. Thank you again, Chair Vilas and the Committee on Public Housing, for allowing me to testify on such an important matter to WE ACT.
Thank you. Lavelle Shaw.
How are you? Thank you for having me here today. My name is Lavelle Shaw. I'm 26 years old. From what I gathered, the overall objective of this hearing is to ensure the well-being of NYCHA residents, especially as it relates to their housing. I personally have been homeless since age 16, back in 2013, and I'm still homeless now. I'm in transitional housing, which is considered homelessness, where they're taking more than 80% of my income, while permanent housing is 30% of my income. Doesn't make any sense. So I'm wondering what's to be done about us millennials and Gen Z that are in record numbers becoming homeless, and really not much is being done about it but giving us the runaround.
So thank you, Lavelle. Our last hearing, we actually talked about vacancies in NYCHA properties in particular, right? And we are in a serious situation around that. We have the largest number of vacancies we've ever had, and a continued slow process, which is partially attributed to, from what is reported, the type of repairs and abatement that has to be done. And then there's a big question mark, which we did not receive adequate response from NYCHA around why we are in this particular situation, or at least an explanation that tells us this percentage of units are out of commission for this reason, this for this reason, this for that reason. We have yet to receive that information from NYCHA. But I will say, to your point, is that correcting that situation is urgent. We need every single one of those units exactly for someone like you, who deserve to be in adequate housing, not only in NYCHA, but in New York City on the whole. So your question, I think, is not only related to that issue, but to New York City. I think what you are saying here in your testimony, and thank you for that, is to say, what is this city doing for its young people to ensure that we are in safe, dignified housing? And we are clearly not doing enough. And that's going to require this mayor to fully invest in not only supportive housing, but the housing, low-income housing in general, right? And I say that very specifically because affordable housing means a lot to a lot of people, and it's mostly unaffordable to New Yorkers. And so the budget will be coming up, and we will be fighting about this budget around what the real commitments are to low-income housing, to affordable housing, the policy commitments. Will we pass laws that will actually help, or are we passing fake laws that don't mean anything to real people? Right? And are we making sure that our agencies are doing what they can? Do they have the workforce, right, that they need? Is HPD, the agency that manages much of the housing, is it fully staffed? Does it have the inspectors that we need to make sure that those units are okay? So there's an enormous amount of work to be done in this area, and I'm sorry that our city is failing you, and we are here working to fix that. I wish I had a silver bullet to say, we're gonna change your condition tomorrow. I unfortunately do not, but I would love to continue to talk to you
Please.
after this hearing, and thank you again for your testimony. I just wanted to, get to Mr. O'Hara. If, is that your name? Did I?
It's O'Hora.
O'Hara. Apologies. We got a bad track record here with names today. Apologies, sir. Could you talk to me a little bit about some of the more alarming elements that you've seen in your testimony?
Certainly. I think the most alarming thing is that the doctor of the woman who died in the Jacob Reese houses with this arsenic exposure, he did his due diligence. He reached out to the city and the state and told them that the arsenic may have played a role in this woman's death, and he was ignored. The New York City Health Commissioner, in a letter which I have with me, told him it's their diet, it's the shellfish, it's the seafood that they're eating, and he's ignoring this publicly available data of the arsenic levels in this soil. It's almost a complete avoidance of NYCHA's responsibility to provide a safe, healthy environment for folks to live in, and we really don't know how widespread this issue is because no testing has been done. There's been calls for this, but NYCHA has not acted on this at all.
That is, in fact, quite frightening, I will say, for the record. And obviously, our condolences to the family. And, it is still yet a mystery why NYCHA has not purchased these little air majiggies, why it has not allowed people to get tested to calm their sensibilities around whether it's the water or something else in arsenic, while they will say that, obviously they have testified there was no arsenic in the water, yet residents don't trust it for very clear reasons. We have an enormous amount of work to do, but thank you for that. And obviously, we would demand that not only NYCHA, but every city and state agency that is dependent on public dollars respond to the public good and respond to the residents that actually make the government work, and they have a responsibility to do that. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and we'll continue this fight. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you to that panel. I'll call the next panel. Christopher Morris Perry, Annette Tumlin, Marquise Jenkins, and Laura Lugo. If you could all, anyone who's still here, could come up to the... Mr. Morris Perry, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you for having me. And thank you, NYCHA, for staying. Because I went to a committee meeting yesterday, and after it was over with, they all left the room. It just shows the seriousness. People don't take it too serious. I'm a little bit nervous when I'm speaking in public, as you guys can tell, but my passion for change overrides that. I'm just trying to figure out, we hold a NYCHA meeting here, but there's no NYCHA residents in the back of me. So I'm trying to figure this out here. You understand? I'm also, this just seemed like a case of the police policing the police. Everybody is passing the blame on each other. The chickens can never come home to roost if this is continuing to happen. These problems are not new. They've been going on for quite some time. So excuse me for my frustration. You understand? I want to bring up something else before my time expires. And I am going to ask for some more time because it's going down very fast. It's a stipulation in the Section 8 NYCHA agreement that women, and I'm talking about the elephant in the room, that black women cannot have no man in the house while they're getting NYCHA while they're on the NYCHA program. You understand? And after the Great Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt, he came up with these programs to help the country and the economy. And it was about 92 white residents on predominantly these projects that was developed for white citizens, and they was allowed, in order to get their Section 8, they had to be married. They had to have a marriage certificate, you know, to get the qualifications to get NYCHA. Now, today, it's the opposite. You know, you can't have no man in the home. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, go back and check the history, because I'm a history scholar. You understand? And pardon my frustration, but this hurts. I hate seeing my community, which is the black community, been denied and neglected for so long. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares about it. I'm tired of it, and it have to stop. Thank you, I'm done.
Mr. Morris, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. I don't want to be disrespectful.
No, that's okay.
I can come back and speak. I'm just upset. This brings me to tears. This is what keeps me up at night. This is what drove me to run for city council.
Well, I just want to thank you for your testimony, and your outrage is well placed. Right?
Thank you.
If this wasn't the case, we wouldn't be sitting here at this hearing, and we wouldn't be doing this work to hold folks to account, right? Both the agency, the city council, the mayor, everyone is
Absolutely.
responsible for this.
Right.
From the federal to the state level, right? Which is why we put forward a resolution today, right? To demand that the governor actually pay attention to public housing residents and invest in it. Like, we have 500,000 people in public housing who are New York State residents and deserve that investment. So your outrage is shared here, for sure.
Thank you so much.
And
I appreciate it.
We will look into that awful, disgusting provision. If we can find it in the books, it is unacceptable. I agree.
Okay, and I can submit some documentation regarding that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome, voice.
Having no other public witnesses in the room today, we'll move to the Zoom. The first person on Zoom will be Christina Chase, and then Ms. Eldon will call you after. Christina Chase, you should be receiving an invite to unmute shortly.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was just with you guys actually, but I have a newborn at home, so I had to run home. Thank you for everyone who stayed. My name is Christina Chase, and I am a resident of Ravenswood Houses. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much that I've just learned today during the meeting, but my first concern is the lack of oversight of contractors. In 2015, my building, we experienced an asbestos abatement of our roof. I'm on the top floor, which is the 6th floor, and all of that debris fell into my home, into my air conditioner, which I still have, actually. So I have no idea what particles I'm still breathing in to this day. But I have photographs to substantiate the fact that all of this debris did fall into our homes and into our air conditioners. And so I think it's important for us to rethink what oversight looks like of these different contractors. The same thing goes with asbestos abatement of the apartments right next door. All of that exhaust was going into the hallways where there's no windows. So there's no one keeping contractors accountable. And a piece of paper to let us know that this work is being done is not enough. We don't know the consequences of these abatements as residents, and we should be fully informed. The second thing I wanted to bring up was, although we did recently undergo a new ventilation system, the upkeep hasn't been as NYCHA says. For example, the dates that we were told that a worker was going to come and clean the vents, people took the day off and waited, and no one ever came. this is not a first with NYCHA, but it's becoming unacceptable, particularly under the guise of them changing an act that it's still the same. And so I guess I just wanted to second someone else's assertion that there should be random third-party testing of indoor air and outdoor. And then I think Councilwoman Aviles, you brought this up, the light towers that are used to provide lighting during scaffolding, and or the police light towers that are used to compensate for broken exterior lights are responsible for diesel emissions that are complicating respiratory issues for youth and for elders, as well as, you know, people my age in between. I think that those have to go, and there needs to be some kind of stipulation saying that contractors are no longer allowed to utilize this, and we have to come up with like a plan B. I don't know, but as a person with a newborn, and I can't sit idly by while I can actually inhale and smell the exhaust coming from these light towers. And then lastly, I wanted to speak to the fact that I didn't know until today's meeting the negative consequences of using temporary boilers. I'm still learning this myself. I'm a person with a master's degree. It has nothing to do with education levels. It's about access to information. And so I'm curious as to how we can hold NYCHA accountable for using these temporary boilers, but B, informing residents of the negative consequences of these temporary solutions for problems that have existed for decades. And I guess that's all I had to say as of now, but I'm here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Christina, for your testimony and sticking around for this hearing. Can you remind me what development you're in?
I'm in Ravenswood Houses in Queens.
Ravenswood, got it. Yeah, you're next to the giant NRG plant.
Yes, so we are known as Asthma Alley already. And I know that there's only so much that NYCHA can do from other institutions responsible for air pollution, but I'm here today because there are things we can do immediately to address it on our different development.
Can you tell NYCHA two things? That they are here in the room, they have stayed, and they have been staying at every hearing, which I am very appreciative of, and to listen to this testimony, which is really important. Can you give us two concrete things you think would help to make a difference that they could do for residents in this, this area?
You just reminded me. Well, first is actually informing residents of what they can do if they see any issues. I know it's already information overload with the different flyers, but I don't think that people fully understand. Also, I think having someone within the management office that can be responsible for these kinds of complaints or grievances, because a lot of the times calling a number or even emailing can seem a bit daunting, whereas some folks are old school and prefer to just go in person and say something. But that leads me to my next point. When we were discussing work orders during the hearing earlier, I don't think people fully understand the work order reform that NYCHA has undergone in the last few years. Specifically, residents don't know that you have to call the neighborhood planning unit to make an appointment for, say, an exterminator. So if a ticket is created saying that this resident needs an exterminator, a lot of residents, they think it's like the old system where once the ticket's in, NYCHA's gonna come. A lot of them don't know that once that ticket's made, that it's up to them to call the neighborhood planning unit and create that, to schedule that appointment. Moreover, people in the management office, the front desk workers, do not fully understand that. And so when residents come in with particular issues with contracted labor that had to go through the neighborhood planning unit, the staff persons don't know where to point residents. And so I think there needs to be a training for staff persons to understand how to deal with capital complaints and the different forms of labor and how maintenance is not the same as a neighborhood planning unit.
Thank you so much, Christina. This was very helpful, and I absolutely 100% agree with that. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The next witness on Zoom will be Beverly McFarland, and then we'll hear from Dana Eldon, rather. If Ms. McFarland, you'll be receiving an invite to unmute yourself.
Time starts now.
Yes, my name is Beverly McFarland. I am the resident council president for Taft, Senator Robert A. Taft Houses in East Harlem. It's just daunting how these residents had testified today, because we have NYCHA has an active consent decree that they have not yet filled the obligation of that decree, but yet our local officials dropped the ball and had put this trust into place, knowing there's negative impacts of this trust for our developments. In my developments, we are responsible to train, educate our residents. NYCHA have left our resident association leadership to, it's like doing their job. We are here educating, posting flyers for things that they're doing. It's just daunting, you know. And I'm not understanding why these elected officials, like our governor, as well as our mayor, is giving public money to private entities, as PAC and RAD, and now the trust. This is upsetting. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Why is our public dollars not being sent over to our Section 9 program? Why are they not saving Section 9? Because that is the only low-income housing mechanism in our city today. And the problems that we having right now in homelessness, where affordable housing affordable to whom? And we all know, we have these lotteries that you gotta have almost $100,000 to be affordable housing. NYCHA is the public housing is the only entity in our city that will save that we can save our homes as working New Yorkers. But yet, the politicians, some elected officials, our assembly people, and some of our city council have dropped the ball and allowed NYCHA now to get a private entity inside the NYCHA, which is like a management company, which is the trust. It just seems like this entity of the trust is illegal, has been illegally formed, because based on if they have a active consent decree based on the 964, they were not supposed to go into any other housing.
Your time has expired.
Can I continue?
Go ahead, Ms. McFarland.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. Any entity based on the 964, the 960 regulations, I believe it's Section 18, that if they have to act this consent decree, they were supposed to satisfy that before they go in and ask any government agency to go into another program. And the mismanagement of the monies, and no one ever was accountable for that, the missing money. It just doesn't make any sense. But I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. McFarland.
Ms. Eldon, you should be getting an invitation to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you again for letting me speak again. And I wanted to touch base on what the housing panel was speaking on in regards to the testing when you asked them about air qualities and such. So for my development, there was someone, I don't know from what agency, I'm assuming it was the EPA, who came and took a roof sample. I don't know which building they took it from, but the major issue here with the roof replacement is that for 15 months, one of our buildings had a broken water tank on top. So it destroyed the structure of the roof. And in fact, the contractor that did the roof water tank and replaced it, had to shore up the roof so that the workers could replace the panels to the water tank for a new water tank. Also, it was discovered that many of the apartments, one particular apartment underneath the water tank, which was 21E, was destroyed. So the resident had to be transferred out immediately. If you walked in the apartment, the water would come up through the tiles. There were plants growing out of the walls and the floors. The ceiling was almost due to collapse. So there were numerous issues in that one building. So yes, there is a question as to how they're going to take apart that roof when there was so much damage done over a 15-month period of having a busted water tank. And I am fearful, since it is the first building that they're going to do, as to how that's going to work out. And if there will be any daily testing of air around the building and inside the building as they take apart that roof, because it's in pieces. It's not even a level piece that you could say maybe 12 by 12 section. The roof is generally in pieces. And this is why we've had so many problems with leakages through the building and mold in some cases. And I have pictures of a couple of the apartments that were affected by that water tank leak. However, I'm concerned when the panel from NYCHA says that there's all kinds of funding available, but is this funding for Section 9? We are a Section 9 development and do not intend on converting to Section 8.
Your time is
We have
expired.
210 Section 8 residents, and the predominant are Section 9. We have 1,007 apartments. So this is a Section 9 development, and having the funding to complete this work, which I know that they have not foreseen in the future as far as costs, will be available. And of course, there's other funding that needs to be available for Section 9. That is public housing. That is public housing, Section 9. And what is done at Grad and Pack, that's somebody else's business. But my business, my concern is for the residents of St. Mary's Park Houses. That is a Section 9 development, and that we get exactly what we need after being ignored for so many years since the time the building was built. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Eldon. Thank you for your patience and all your work. And we will follow up on the air monitoring regarding whether it's going to be a continuous air monitoring at that site and where those locations will be. So we'll be in touch. And with that, our hearing today concludes. I think what we have seen is there is an enormous work that has been done, clearly, as one of the residents pointed out, under consent decree. Improvements in many areas, and many areas that still require enormous work to be done. But rest assured, the residents are monitoring every single day, and we will hold each other to account, myself and every other elected official every person that works in every agency to make sure that we do the best by our residents and mitigate these harms, remove the harms. So thank you again for your patience and for being here and for your care for public housing. Thank you so much. Oh, I gotta do the.